13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
So, you were right. It was going to be a long and in-depth one. What'd you think there, my friend?
Oh, I had a lot of fun. I haven't talked to that guy, and like he was saying, since August or whatever. So I knew he would be like, as soon as Darren and I had kind of talked about doing the show or whatever, like he was one of the first guys that popped in my mind to come on the show.
Nice.
So I'm glad that we finally got it scheduled and it's in the books now.
Yeah, we kind of took us a while to wrangle this one in.
Which is okay. We got it eventually. So yeah, Shaun's a good personal friend of mine. I met him in a dart league, throwing darts. I think it was a cricket league. It was an all cricket league, if I remember correctly. And he was on the team that I was shooting against, and we got along. Struck up a conversation and built a friendship off of darts. And that was 5 years ago. I've never, like him and I, we never, last session that we played, we came in second place, and it was like a C league. So I'm not a super spectacular dart player. He's actually better than me. So
yeah, the only thing I know about darts is what I learned from a Nintendo game that I used to play as a kid.
A Nintendo game?
Yeah, it was a dart throwing game. You could be an alien too. I forget what it was called. But it was fun. I used to play it at my dad had a really good friend who was into darts, and he picked that up for one Christmas one year, I think.
Neat. Yeah, I don't know. I just always find it. You see people playing, like they have mobile apps for darts and pool, and you see people playing those. It's like, why don't you just get up and do the real thing? But that's neither here nor there. Yeah. So check out the show on Discord. 13 Questions server. We have a Telegram channel now, and you can find that at t.me/13 questions. That's spelled out. And then you can find the link to the Discord in the show notes or on the website. If you enjoy shungite, if you don't know what shungite is, Adam and I were both gifted some shungite from a past guest, Derek Condit, who's kind enough to make us an affiliate with his store. So if you would like to purchase some, there's a link on the site that you can use that will give the show a 10% back off of whatever you purchase there at his store. So I guess, I don't know, do you want to talk about shungite for a second? Like, I still have my pendant on.
I do. I wear mine every day. And actually, I think we were talking about this the other day. I put a bunch of little pieces of shungite all over my electrical equipment and my my router. But yeah, no, I've always been fascinated by crystals, and as we talked about on the episode, apparently I've always been wearing quartz inside of a watch. But yeah, I'm fascinated by shungite in particular just because of its structure. I've always been kind of got a little geeky with buckyballs and, the relationship to oil and its lubrication properties. And then finding that, the stone also has this geometric, structure within that's very similar. It's a really, really fun stone. And, just on the side note of, it's a really cool stone. It's always, it holds the cold very well. It's an old, very dense stone. So yeah, I don't know. It's always been one of my favorite stones when I go to the crystal store, and I've never owned one until our guest. So yeah, it was very cool. And surprisingly, it's the first stone necklace that I've worn regularly and continuously. So that was a bit surprising. It has a good feeling. I don't know if it's placebo or if it's real. I couldn't properly describe grounding, but it feels something like that. pulls the tension out of my my chest. So placebo or not, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I'm not a jewelry guy. Like, I don't wear rings or necklaces, or I don't have any piercings or tattoos. And so for me to wear like a necklace like this on a continuous basis, like, I don't know, speaks to me on a personal level, like that it is obviously doing something. But yeah, you were saying like the placebo thing, like it could be just a placebo. If it is, who cares? It's still having an effect. But I'm kind of leaning towards the opinion of it not being a placebo, because like we're both having the same experience, so that there's got to be some kind of correlation there, at least. Or not, maybe not we jump to straight to causation, but I don't know, there's like a pattern between both of our experiences. So
To me, perception is reality. And if I'm perceiving that there is an effective change, I'm having an effective change. Like, so for me, it's fine. And at the very least, it looks stinking cool. But yeah, I'm on the line that you're on. Crystals do have incredibly cool powers just amongst themselves, whether it be piezoelectric or optically. Or like the ability to hold resonance within a system, or time crystals, which can, hold a repetitive, pattern going through them, going against entropy. There are a lot of really interesting characteristics. So to me, to assume that the crystal is nothing more than a stone, it is a very intricate pattern. It is a geometric structure that in and of itself has the ability to create electrical properties. So I don't know. To me, in an animistic universe, that pattern seems like it could be really important. Could be maybe like you have a lens, right? And it focuses light. That's one of the aspects of this. You have crystals that can focus light too. Maybe there's other aspects of reality that a crystal is good at focusing that we just don't have the tools or the understanding to quantify. So yeah, I'm in that realm of, I don't have a scientific reason to believe in it, but I feel a quantitative effect, and I'm forward thinking enough to see that there could be some basis in the effect of reality. And, why not? Amulets and stones have been sought after for as long as history has been recorded, and people have always used them for protection or different things. So maybe there really is something to it.
yeah, and it's just a cool way to support the show too, because we are value for value. So all the show content is free to everybody. We just recently switched over to one feed that includes the bonus questions, as opposed to having to go through Discord to get that. So yeah, I wanted to offer our listeners something tangible to hold in their hand in order, in exchange for supporting the show. So if you don't jive with the Shungite thing, we should have stickers on the website soon, if not by the time this is out. And then what's the other? We might have a shirt. Like, we might be doing a pre-order shirt. I'm not too sure. And then there's another way that they could support the show. What is it? I'm blanking.
Donation link?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
Send us your opinions. Tell your friends about us.
Share the show.
Yeah, share the show. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more of it, you have the power. If you want the show to increase in its capabilities, its repetition, its quantity, that's up to you in helping us get guests, helping us improve our ability to do things on this end. Even just keeping the lights on. It's really important. Right now, we're still going out of pocket, which is fine, but there are those that are supporting us, and for that, we are so incredibly thankful. I don't have the list of you in front of me. I'll get that soon, Bill. We'll do an updated shout out, because honestly, without you guys, this thing would be dead in the water. No listeners, no show. So thank you, because you're why we're here.
Yeah, and there's definitely going to be some more, like, as the show evolves, there's going to be some more opportunities for the listeners to get more, involved or recognized. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we are really grateful for everyone. And I guess that brings us to the gratitude segment. And I don't know, just to piggyback off that is, I was just thinking about being a part of these online communities. Like the Discord has been a huge part of my journey through cyberspace and why I'm here on the microphone now, or how I met Adam and Darren and Graham and Gramerica and all these different communities I found. Like, and for somebody that doesn't get out into society, like having that other avenue of human connection is important. So, and I don't get out in society not because I don't want to. It's because I work, remotely, and so there's no commuting. There's no, I order groceries from online and they get delivered. It just the amount of human contact is decreasing. So I'm finding more value in connecting with people through the show, like having conversations like this and chatting with people on, Discord and Telegram and whatnot. So yeah, and we do have the gratitude jingle that I keep promising you guys and talking about.
You are a massive tease, Bill.
I know. We got to keep them coming back somehow.
So what is your gratitude this week, Mr. Bill?
Oh, that was having these different avenues of human connection.
Gotcha.
That little bit.
To do what we're doing right now 10 years ago would have been a very expensive and very technical endeavor. It still is, but it's now something that you and I can do without needing a full-on production studio. If we wanted to be doing high definition video, we could be doing that, with a couple of grand. So, I mean, it's really cool to think that, we're in that realm of, like you said, connectivity, where we can make these connections, where you and me, thousands of miles apart, are still able to get a really good, high quality, high production together. Like, it is very cool to see those different technologies, video conferencing software turned podcasting, music equipment turned podcasting, personal computers turned into podcasting. All these different technologies developed for different things have come together to allow this merging into one thing that we do here. So it's really fun to kind of see, this is an amalgamation of so many different industries and hobbies.
Yeah, for sure. Does that kind of tie into your gratitude then?
Yeah, I think you just nailed me into mine. Yeah, I'm that ability for, I mean, I've talked about it before, like the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, being able to connect technologies, across the span of decades as being amazing. But there really is something to be seen when you see all these individual things. Like my mixer was designed for a musician with guitar pedals, and things like that. But the way that it can integrate into a podcast is really stinking cool. The fact of how it's mixing together all the different equipment I have in here that's pulled from different, spaces. And then even being able to, it's so fun that there are so many pieces of technology and design and things that come from man's mind to design these tools, that there's no one way to do it. There's no one microphone. There is thousands of microphones. There is thousands of mixers. Like any bit of technology that you could be looking at to get into this, there are so many different ways that you can put these pieces together. And, it's kind of cool to see, just how we build these Lego blocks of technology that, through everything, the patents, the design, the trying to make money, the trying to find a market, quality control, ends up with what we have right here into this thing that can make what we're doing happen now. And I'm probably doing a terrible job of describing it, but just that complexity within the technologies is something I'm really grateful for, that, we can play in that way. We can make things out of these other things.
Yeah, dude, we talk a lot about gratitude in this episode, so I'm glad to see that. That was cool to happen, but it is kind of a lengthy one. So I don't know. I guess we should just get to it unless you have anything else to add.
Nope, that's good. Enjoy the show. Contact us, and value for value.
Well, before we start, do you want to say anything to let people know who you are before we jump into the first question, or not?
I mean,
doesn't matter. I mean, they can read the
did you
show
want me to
notes
just
anyway.
kind of go over who I am, basically?
If you want to,
in like a paragraph.
Do you have a paragraph prepared?
No, not prepared. No, but
okay.
I mean, I'll give you all the pedigree information, real quick. I'm 40 years old. I have 2 daughters. I live in South Bend, Indiana. I moved here in 2006. I moved here from Massachusetts. I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts. And I served in the Air Force for 4 years. And over the years, I've done many various crazy and unsuccinct things. So, I've been a bicycle mechanic, but I've also worked in like government security, and I've also, concurrently work in manufacturing. So kind of never really nailed myself down to one thing. I'm kind of always moving through, trying different stuff.
Yeah. So, question 1. What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
Long time ago, when I was first in my foray into being a bicycle mechanic, I worked at the shop in Mishawaka down the road here. And the one guy I met, he was like an older guy that had been around for a while. And he was just like, the first day I was there, he's like, look, man, got 2 things for you. He's like, be teachable, lead your ego at the door. You're not better than anybody else. And, put your pride, it's kind of tamp that down a little bit so you can learn someone else's way of doing things. And that was like, I just thought about that for I give everybody else I know the same piece of advice. Like a new person comes to the job I'm at, we're training them like, hey man, just be teachable, be willing to learn. You can do it however you want to do it, but right now be willing to learn this way, and I feel like that sort of avoids conflict later, instead of being the guy that like, I know how to do this, or, having that ego to think better than that sort of subject matter expert that's training or teaching you about something else. Like, just be open to new ideas, and I modifying it, not really. I mean, that's a good, solid piece of advice. It's just, just humble yourself a little bit and be ready to accept knowledge and accept the, changes and things like that.
Yeah, no, I like that. It kind of, takes the wall down. It's like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you how to do things. I'm just trying to give you some tools, and, if they work for you, you keep them. If you have some that work better, you get to use them. But right now, here's the tools you need to learn from me.
Right. Absolutely. And it's more of a toolbox versus the tools. You know what I mean? Like that's more of like you can kind of structure the way you'll kind of gel and fit in with whether it's like job training or even in an academic setting or just, sitting on your couch watching the documentary. There's many times where I just like wanted to instinctually grab the remote and change it. I'm like, no, let me get to the end. Let me see where this goes. Like be open to new ideas is I think it's a good way to kind of maneuver, especially, like nowadays where no one's open to any new ideas, it seems like, and everybody's like, this is what it is. And if it's not, F you, and like, I'm just kind of more of a, well, let me hear what that guy has to say, or let me listen to this thing, or this is controversial. So let me dig into it and see where that goes. So
that kind of, to me, kind of speaks to being humble. Like,
right.
Just realizing you don't know everything and that, everybody can be your teacher. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's kind of the thing, it's the whole idea of being teachable. Like sometimes like I've been training other people at different places, jobs and whatnot. And I give them that. I was like, hey man, just be teachable. Like, just be willing to learn a new way. That's like kind of, and they look at you like, some younger people, like I had this kid and he was like, only like 22 or something. And he just kind of looked at me like, I'm teachable. And I'm like, if you have that look on your face, you're probably not getting it. Like that's not the idea. The idea is not to challenge what I'm telling you. It's to, maybe rearrange the way you view this. So, yeah, that's just, honestly, I thought I had 3 different answers for that. And I settled on the being teachable. That's because I feel like that's something, I don't really remember because I only wrote down one.
All right.
But I had a sergeant in the Air Force. He used to say this all the time. He'd say, fix it now. Fix it now. Don't wait. Don't wait until your car's making a horrible noise. If it's making a little noise, fix it now. Anything in life, it doesn't have to be a physical repair, right? It could be anything. Like you had a fight with your girlfriend, fix it now. Don't let it linger. Don't let it wait. Don't forget about it. And then one day it blows up in your face. Like, be willing to tackle those challenges all the time and consistently enough so that it's not going to be massive problems later. And I always thought that was a really cool, piece of advice. Like just fix it now. Don't linger. Don't procrastinate. And I'm the king of procrastination in some respects. So that was definitely good advice.
Yeah, especially in respects to the relationships. You just said like getting in a fight with your girlfriend and like leaving that unresolved. That's never a good thing. Either it's
right.
A, gonna come back and blow up in your face, or B, it'll just never be talked about again, which isn't healthy either.
Right. It creates resentment in a way. But yeah, I just thought that just fix it now. Like deal with it now. Like I do it with everything, with with my vehicles, my household, my daughters. If I see my daughter doing something, maybe like there's a chance for me to step in and parent. And it's like, well, deal with this now. Don't be like, well, I got to get off the couch. And, I'm looking at this Facebook thing, like, but being able to put aside and like it kind of, in a way, it's a way to readjust your priorities, right? If you're looking for ways to make small improvements in any respect, whether it's, emotional, physical, or what have you, then those small improvements can like over time, it's a buildup. You know what I mean? It's not like a big, hey, I just went outside and overhauled my engine, or, it's, I came in and I did this and then I vacuumed out my car and then I came inside and, fixed the skin knee on my daughter's, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like basically dealing with stuff as it comes and in a quick manner, not necessarily rushing, but just dealing with it, not letting it settle is always it's always been good for me because, eventually you kind of hit a stride with it. Right. And now it's not a struggle to deal with those little things,
Yeah, for sure. Question number 2 then. What was the most important lesson you learned from your parents?
Well, it's kind of sort of the answer's sort of twofold, right? And one of them, like my dad tends to like stay out of our lives as sons. Like I have 3 brothers, so there's 4 of us. And my father kind of doesn't nag. It's not that he's uncaring. It's just that he's just like, I'm going to be back here. You do you. I did everything I needed to do. Now you're off on your own. You're a grown up. So, and I always respect that because it's, my mom loves to get involved, in various ways. Now, setting up good, healthy boundaries is one way to do that. But that same thing of my dad being, hey, a little standoffish at times and really like he doesn't get involved in. There's the other side of that is like also learning kind of, I'd hate to say it like this because my parents, don't get me wrong, my parents were not bad people. They were not bad parents. We all do the best we can, but I learned almost more about what not to do from them than like as far as a lesson. Like, I learned, my dad likes to shout. That's his like, that's how he emotes. He raises his voice. And I don't do that. I'm extremely patient with my daughters. I talk to them like people. I don't infantilize them. I don't talk down to them. I just, I'm like, hey, look, etc. And sometimes, you get the dad voice out because, things are getting a little chaotic. But, like just making those changes about like, I'm not going to do these things. everyone has that when you're a kid, like, especially like maybe you get in trouble for something. You're like, well, now I'm a grown up, I'm never punishing my kids or something ridiculous, right? But at the same time, like just learning what not to do, I think is sometimes more powerful for me, because learning what to do it's pretty easy. It's adulting. You pay your bills, the trains are running on time, you go to work every day. I mean, those are great, but those other things about like being patient with my children, not putting them in situations where they have no tools, like educating them young about everything from, vehicle maintenance to what to do if this happens, and being kind of a support structure for my daughters. That's like, if anything happens, they drank too much at a party, they crashed their car, they're in some kind of trouble, that I should be their first phone call, and they should always be thinking like that.
Instead of
Not
afraid
because
to come to you. Instead of afraid to come to you, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I want them to know that, like, no matter what happens, Dad will come and help. And there may be consequence later, but I'll come and get you out of the situation you're in, or whatever I have to do, whether it's something as simple as just, giving them a ride, or if it's like I have to go bail them out of the, whatever, the South Bend Police Department or whatever. But, like creating that relationship with my children where it's like me, I actually got arrested one time and I didn't call anybody. I was like, I'm not calling my parents. What are you, crazy? Like, even the police officer's like, you can call like your parents. And I'm like, yeah, no. And they couldn't do anything because I was, of legal adult age. So that, but they just thought it was curious that, like, a somewhat young person wasn't calling mom and dad to come bail them out. I was like, no, I'll just stay here until tomorrow and I'll go to the courthouse and get it all sorted out. And the guy was like, what, really? I'm like, first of all, it's like 2 a.m, right? And the last thing I want to do is call mom at 2 a.m, But having that, like, it's not that my parents wouldn't help me, but it's that their vibe, the dance that they do is different than the dance I do. And that's a purposeful thing. It sometimes causes conflict when I go home to New England and visit, but I mean, really just like, because what I wrote down was not raising my kids the way my brothers and I were raised. And I don't want to make it sound like my parents were like these monstrous abusive people or something.
No, but we're all teachers. So a lot of what we carry through, we get from people, we learn from people. Not everybody has the same learning. And oh my gosh, you don't know what they came from. It could be a vast improvement. In the same way, I like to look back at old film. We don't think we're a very evolved culture, but go watch movies from, the early 1900s, and you're going to see we acted in a terrible way by today's standards. So, yeah, they're coming from a different time. They're, I don't know. The fact that you came out the way you did and can take those lessons on to the next step is just, I don't know. It seems to me like the right thing. You're learning, and you would hope that your kids would do the same, that they would learn,
Absolutely.
what not to do, because, there's times everybody messes up. Nobody's perfect. That they go, I'm never doing X, Y, Z. And that's beautiful, because then if they taught you one thing, they taught you the right thing just to learn from you. Sorry, I'm rambling. I'm taking your show.
No, I 1000% agree with what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. I guess what I'm trying to say is all goes back to that being teachable, right? I feel like that's kind of going to be a common thread here, but it's, the lessons I learned from my parents were how to provide better lessons for my children. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like how to structure my parenting and my style in a way that makes me, approachable, but yet I'm still in charge. I'm still the boss, But at the same time, like, my daughters can come to me with a problem, regardless of what it is or how intense it is, and feel like that I'm a safe place to bring that issue to, and that their issue will be addressed, at least in their eyes, in an appropriate way. I would like to hope I would handle it appropriately, but, mistakes get made.
Right. So before we move on, so you got in front of the judge after you stayed a night in jail, and he let you go?
Yeah.
Or? Yeah,
I bailed myself out. I had enough money in my checking account, and I swiped my debit card, and they it was actually, it's fines. I didn't do any like criminal craziness. Like I didn't rob something, or it's just I had unpaid tickets, and I moved to Indiana, and like 9 or 10 years went by, and then I got pulled over in Massachusetts, and they were like, "Hey, you have warrants out on you," and I was like, at this moment, I stopped talking. So, so I just kind of, but I'm not calling my mom to bail me out of jail at 2 a.m. Like I'm 28, I don't need that.
Right.
So, but no, I got in front of the judge, and they said, this is this, that is that. I had to pay a certain portion of the fines owed, and that was basically my bail. And then when I paid the fines, then I went back to the thing and showed them the paper that said I paid the fines, and I got my bail back. Right. So I only had to pay like $375 to bail out of custody. But then I had to pay the fine and then go to the thing to get reimbursed. And it's like, why can't you take that $375 off the top of the fine? However, but that's not how it works in a bureaucracy, right? You got to go to one window to get a paperwork to be approved from the other window to go to this. You know what I mean? Like it's just the rigmarole of anything government is.
Thank you, citizen, for keeping the system going. Your money was greatly needed.
Right. It's a jobs program. All that bureaucracy is just intended to keep people in work, which, yes, we need that. But at the same time, it's kind of ridiculous.
Oh, how about something productive for society, not just tickets?
Right. Or there's wiser ways to generate income as a municipality than fining and punitive measures, in my opinion.
All right, Shaun, what book has been the most influential in your life, and why?
There's a book I read a few years ago, and I think, Bill, you and I have actually talked about this in other places, but it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I hope I can curse here. If you have to go back and edit that, I understand.
No, curse away.
No, so that's the book title. I'm not, but it's basically, it's a philosophy on caring about what you need to care about and just letting everything else, like if it's not a real priority for you, just kind of let it go. And readjusting your focus in that way can provide you success in like careers and relationships and, in parenting, and friendships, whatever. Any social interaction really is what it's more about. But I read that book and I started because it was kind of cheeky. It's got a cheeky title. There's a curse word in it. And you're like, oh, let's read this. It's hipster garbage. And then I get like 10 pages in and I'm like, this is really interesting. And I just kept going. I read the book in like less than a day. And I've actually applied some of the lessons, the philosophy to like my work environment. And, I work in manufacturing. So it's all about the numbers, how much you produce. And when you're not producing, what the downtime is and why. And then after reading that book, I started readjusting how I could be better at my job as opposed to just rushing around. Now I'm looking at clearing up smaller inefficiencies. And I don't, there's people I know that sort of sprint around, like, cause they're, we got to meet the goal. And, and they're just rushing and rushing and rushing. And that book kind of taught me to just slow it down and look at what the priority is, like there are certain ways that I deal with the machine issue, troubleshooting, or something gets stuck or jammed, that you could do this and do that and skip steps 3, 4, and 5, go straight to step 6. And it actually reduces the level of downtime, creates more production. And that's just one example, but influential is like, you read a self-help book and sometimes I read stuff like that and it's just in one ear and out the other kind of like, I don't really take any of the lessons. It's just like, yeah, there's, I don't consider it wasted time, but it's not something that's like really going to hook me in. But then when I read that book, it's just, I could not stop thinking about like the idea of, just taking it easy. And really it's about priorities, moving your, making it, I love efficiency. I'm a big fan. So making things more efficient, whether it's like, how you drive from point A to point B, or, how your work is handled, or just, and like social relationships too. Like, I have a friend and you've met him. He's a bit of we'll say failure to launch, right? He's kind of a guy you got to take in small doses. And what I realized was it's a priority for me to have him as my friend. Like he's a valuable person to me, but bringing him into a situation with a group of friends, he tends to sometimes act inappropriately. if you get my drift there, Bill. So like just knowing the priority is all right. So now my priority is to keep him around, but not put him in a situation where he can embarrass himself. And so we hang out like just him and I at my house, and we'll watch a movie or, you know, play cards or what have you. So learning those lessons, like instead of giving the quote fuck about, you know, well, Nate's my friend too, and my other friend should just deal with it or whatever, which is not really the case, but having the knowledge and having the thought process to say, hey, this person's important to me, but he's a little troublesome in certain situations. So let's kind of move the needle this way, and that way him and I can still have our relationship without it damaging my other relationship. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's you're not giving a fuck in some areas and increasing the, I don't know. You're balancing it out.
You're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
So you're kind of saying like, yeah, there's still value here, but you know, it's not always valuable. I don't know. You described it well.
Well, thank you. And don't get me wrong. My friend Nate is not a bad dude. He's just,
no, I love Nate.
Certain social situations. You know what I'm talking about, Bill. He'll start doing his, you know, his movie impressions and things, and we're all just kind of like, oh God, make it stop. You know, but he's just not good in social situations in that respect. So, and like you said, I'm kind of reducing my level of I care about this here to increase that, you know what I mean? Like as one part of the graph moves downward, another part of the graph is moving upward. So it's still, you know, like you said, it kind of balances itself in a way.
Right.
And you know, the work-life balance is always difficult. But you know, if you know, like that, those priorities when I applied them to my occupation, you know, and that actually made real improvements in a lot of things. My relationship with my boss, who at the time was really horrible to work for him because he's a micromanager, you know. And now that I stopped kind of, I put thoughts out of my head about like, I don't feel like anybody should have a good performance in anything based on like the idea that it's going to bring you trouble if you don't perform, right? Or, you know, my boss is going to write me up. My boss is, you know, he's going to yell at me about this. You know, I believe that there's different ways to motivate people. So I took my own level of what am I motivated about? I want to do a good job. And I want to be able to maintain this job for a while. And the kind of undercurrent there is like, I don't like working under the sort of the how do I put this? Like the fear of it. I don't like having the anxiety of, you know, oh, I better do this right or my boss is going to come and XYZ, you know? Whereas if I look at it in a different light, I can be like, well, if I do it this way, then that'll keep him out of my hair. But at the same time, we can, you know, I make decisions. I guess I'm lost in my own. I know where I kind of want to go, but I don't have the words.
No, I get it. It's kind of it's a micro-managed way of balance because clearly he has some goals and some things that he's trying to achieve, and there's an efficiency there, and you see your own efficiencies, and you know they don't always line up. So you've got to figure out a way so that you know they can interweave to some level. And there's an art to that. It's, you know, and personality can definitely get in the way because if you attach, you know, that feeling or emotion to something, you feel like you're personally, you know, you're personally fighting for part of yourself when no, it's, you know, we have a third goal and, you know, it's really the same. So for you, I would assume it would be make more money, make it faster, be more efficient, you know, something very simple. So if you're both on the same page, you know, you're not really fighting each other. You know, you're fighting this current of trying to figure out what is most efficient.
Right. And it's the execution of that becomes the tricky part. Like you can think all day long about, yes, you know, my boss and I have the same goal. At the end of the day, we want to produce, you know, I work at a company that makes pistons, right? So at the end of the day, we want to produce a finished product, get that out to the customer. That's the goal. But it's how we get to that goal that was kind of the part that meshed up. And I was having a troublesome time, you know. I don't like being threatened with write-ups. I don't like being told that, well, you're my weakest one. He would say stuff like that to me. He's like, well, you're the weakest one. And I'm like, you don't need to tell a guy he's the weakest link. I don't know if you feel that that's going to like motivate me in like that old school kind of militant way where it's like, I hate that guy so much. I'm going to do so much better than he ever thinks I could. Sort of a very sports coachy kind of motivation. And that's just not how I work. Yeah.
Yeah. So the art of not, what is it called? The art of not?
It's the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
Okay.
And
funny that, I don't know, I think this kind of ties in the Discord chat in the philosophy channel. JFK, a listener, posted something about the art of not trying. And it talks about, I watched it. It's actually pretty cool. And it talks about Taoism with a T. So I think that kind of like ties in to like not giving a fuck, not trying. And I won't try to, I watched the video, but yeah, trying to explain it is a challenge, but yeah. So check out the chats if you haven't.
No, I will when I have a few minutes. I'll look into it.
Right on. So yeah, little synchro there almost, maybe.
Right,
I don't know.
right. It's like I can't explain to you lesson for lesson, chapter for chapter, the book, but I can just tell you that like I read it and then go, all right, I need to make a change. And the changes I made were actually for the positive. I know a lot of people had a rough 2020. All the things that are going on, pandemic, politically, etc. I actually had a great year. Like it's the most money I've ever made. Like my relationships are all great. My kids are doing awesome. Nobody in my family has been seriously ill or injured. You know what I mean? Like 2020 was such a good year for me. But part of that is it's the buildup from reading something like that. And there's more that, kind of went along with that. It's not just the one book, but that kind of branched into different avenues. I read a whole bunch of books about these, these new philosophies of doing things. And then those small steps, those small efficiencies, those gaps were closing. And then I got to 2020 and I just had an outrageously good year because I sort of reinvented the way I think and do things.
Yeah, 2020's either been real nice to you or real mean to you, it seems like.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
And I don't I'm not trying to brag. I feel bad when everyone's like, it's such a rough year because I'm like, I did awesome.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I know that said, can say the same thing. And it's like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Some of us did well, some of us did not so well. I really respect those people that could take that, the make lemonade out of lemons moment.
Well, that's how nature works.
New businesses.
Yeah, think about it, right? You have a forest that's overgrown and dying and compacted. You then have the worst thing that could happen is you have a forest fire. It burns everything and singes it. But really, it becomes the healthiest and best thing because there are things that do well. There's things in the soil and animals that come back and new growth. And then you have a stronger resurgence. That's just how it works. So even during the bad times, there's still pockets and places that are always going to, to see the light, to thrive.
Yeah. And I'm a believer in it's only as bad as you make it. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people, it's like, oh, this is terrible, and I'm at home, and I can't work, and I do this too. I negative think, and it's not good, and I get into those patterns. But a lot of times, I try and be the optimist. Bill here knows that I'm quite an optimist about a lot of things. Sometimes frustrating to him.
Well, yeah. But, look, the vast majority of us have a roof over our heads, and are at least not starving. I like to put it into comparison that there was a point in time when one of the most valuable things on the planet was salt and fresh water. And now you can walk into any fast food restaurant and get packets of salt and a cup of water for free. So, we're, by comparison, we're doing pretty good. We're not fighting off bears and tigers and monsoons. You can always, if you need to, go to the grocery store and walk into an air-conditioned building and sit in a chair, for the whole day if it's unoccupied.
Right.
I don't know. I always like to put it into comparison because you're right. A lot of it is in your head because you could be in the middle of the Amazon when it's 50 degrees in pouring rain that's been going on nonstop for 2 weeks, with no fire, no food, no tools. That could be you.
Yeah.
But
that was a horrible place to be.
But I love that because that doesn't mean that we should discount the place that we're at now, but it's a good place to to nest your mind at sometimes, just so, like you said, because I'm fascinated too by when you hear about people who lived through wars or terrible natural disasters and the coming together that those people had, because it refocused what was important. All these cages of society that we think are important mean nothing when it's you against a mudslide type thing. So those moments, people have the best times and the greatest memories, and they're the happiest in what you think would be the worst. So yeah, it really is this kind of weird magic way of trying to frame yourself in the right way so that even if it is bad, it's not bad.
Right. And even in some really bad, like you're saying, where there's natural disaster, warfare, famine, I mean, people tend to shed their preconceptions, their prejudices to, like when the mudslides come and it's like, get everybody out of the neighborhood. It's not like, forget Jim. I don't like him. He doesn't mow his grass. I'm only saving my family. No one thinks that way in a crisis. They just go straight to, how do we help everybody right now?
Dude, imagine there's like a river, a mudslide, something flying by, and there's somebody in the water. Hey, we should do a background check on him. But meanwhile, somebody moving into your neighborhood who's going to be your neighbor, it's like, no. So yeah, it breaks down what it means to be a human.
And again, going back to the readjustment of priorities, that could tip your scale really one way or the other. But then, as time goes on, then everything kind of levels out a little bit. Then you have that memory of, that one time when we're in, I worked at a summer camp years ago, and they had a microburst, which is like this intense downdraft of air, right? And we're in the middle of the woods in New Hampshire. So the trees are moving in ways that is obviously unnatural, but I was just like, oh, we need to get under cover now. Like we're in a little cabin, it's not a super sturdy thing. There's a building 100 feet away that has like a concrete basement. It's like, we need to get there now. So, I just basically shouted everyone to get the F out, and we ran 100 yards into this basement. And then when it was all said and done, I mean, the carnage was just, it was unreal. But we're all a bunch of Boy Scouts, and we're all running around. All right, first things first, is anyone hurt? Who's here? Let's take accountability. Find your people, and then we're waiting for orders from the camp director, the boss, to send people. All right, go here, go there. We're evacuating this. We had teams of people that were just jogging around, making sure that campsites and places where people gather, whether it's, like the dining hall or other areas where people would seek shelter in the rain, making sure that those structures are sound, is still there, and it's just like everyone came together really quickly in a very intense way to make sure that everybody else was taken care of. And it kind of went seamlessly because right now it's, I got a stitch in my side and I don't wear it, but no, I'm beating feet and sprinting with the rest of them just to try to make sure that there's not, some guy trapped under a tree somewhere, or, a building collapsed and we need to maybe escalate the level of expertise to extract those people or to get them to a safe place. There was a couple people that went to the hospital, nothing super serious, but you get knocked down by a tree. We want to make sure that, you're not going to suffer a spinal injury, things like that.
Yeah, it's scary because you're in an area that doesn't suffer that kind of extreme. So the branches that are going to break are just going to break. They haven't been through that, regular seasonal storm.
Right. And there's a thunderstorm and some wind, and we're used to that. But
yeah,
this
microbursts
was
are pretty
trees
powerful.
that were 18, 20 inches in diameter. Like, it's just snapping them like twigs, dude. It was like
That's
outrageous.
Crazy.
Like, and it was like that. It was just instantaneous. It went from being like, it's about to rain, to be like, oh my God, run for your lives. It was very intense.
So, yeah, finding your level was like, you had mentioned water at some point, and it just came to my mind, like, water always finds its level, so be like water.
Well, not just water, but liquid in general. It'll always find its,
right.
It covers all the space. So what liquid do you want to be, I guess?
Right. We'll move on to the next.
You could be a slow moving,
Okay.
Or
like
you could,
molasses.
Something like water or alcohol that flows very quickly.
Where viscosity.
Viscosity. Like motor oil is going to be slower to readjust, to readapt. Right. So yeah, be water, I guess, is what you were trying to say.
Yeah. All right. Question 4. What daily habits or rituals do you have?
I've actually, I'm adjusting my answer because I did this a few months back, but lately I've been making my bed every day. And I know it doesn't seem like much, but I just, for some reason, I was like, I needed to kind of turn a corner. After the new year, I went from working night shift to day shift. Very happy now. So every morning when I get up,
Congratulations.
I get dressed. Thank you. Yeah, I've waited for that for a long, long time. I brush my teeth and shower and all that stuff. And then when I come in the bedroom to grab my cell phone, I just real quick take 30 seconds to, smooth out the comforter and put the pillows up. And, every day my bed is made. And that's kind of a new daily habit. But it's also, there's I think it was, I'm trying to remember his name. He was an admiral. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he gave this speech at a college commencement, and he was talking about, he has these like 10 things, these military lessons that everybody can learn from. One of those things is make your bed every day. You start off with a sense of accomplishment. You did a thing, you put yourself in a position. You're also you're tidying up your life in a way. So, that just, it's kind of like a thing. It kind of motivates me in the morning. Like there was one day I was running late and I kind of rushed out of the house, and all day long I was thinking about how I didn't make my bed. And I'm not that tidy person that, I've always been that messy kid that never, ever made his bed. And then when I joined the military, I'm like, you got to do this every day. Oh, So as an adult now I'm doing it, and I feel like you know what I mean? It's not like a grandiose thing, but those little things, like I say, that are adding up,
right,
that make your bed every day.
Like a routine, a ritual. I've been thinking about this lately, and I think it seems like if you can tie down the beginning of your day and the end of the day, it kind of makes the time in between like easier to manage. And so like having that little ritual, like making your bed and then doing other things as like a little routine that you go through, and then like doing something different, but the same in the evening. Like,
right.
So yeah, even like make your bed. Who else says that? Jordan Peterson has a thing about
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, clean your room. That's his thing, is clean your room. Like he's like, how can you change the world if you can't change your own living space? And I'm like,
the guy who wrote
fascinated by him.
The guy who wrote The War of Art. Stephen S. Prescott or something. I'll have to look it up. It's the book that Joe Rogan recommends to so many people. And he has the same type of thing for writing, that you need to clean your workspace and sit down with intent. Like it's the whole, that the muse is not going to come to you until you prepare. So it's the same type of thing. Like, look, your life's not going to get tidied up until you start tidying it up. Things aren't going to arrange themselves. It's not going to be ready. So I like that. It's almost like a very kind of like mystical task, even though it's a simple ritual. Make your bed.
Right. And it's not elaborate. I'm not, I don't, I just pull everything up, smooth the covers out, put the pillows on the bed. Everyone's got extra pillows and some of them wind up on the floor every night. But just to pick them up off the ground and put them back on the bed, then you have you're organizing your own mind as well. Because, you have a purpose, you have a task is accomplished, mission is accomplished. Now on to the next task. Now I pack my lunch, or, put on my boots, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And the original answer I had was, I learned this from Tony Robbins a few years back, is to find 3 things you're grateful for every day.
Oh, absolutely.
And Bill, if you remember, a few years back, I didn't own a car. I just rode bicycle everywhere. And that was the one thing I would do every day on the way to work, is I would think of those 3 things, and it could be something as simple as like, I'm grateful to my daughter's mother that her and I don't have a complex, hard relationship, and we didn't involve like the courts, and we just kind of were adults and we come together, and she's always very, very gracious. Anytime I want to see my kids, I can see them. There's no like, I'm keeping them from you, or you didn't pay your child support this week, or, we don't use the kids as weapons against each other. We're very amicable about a lot of things. I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful that my parents were good parents and raised me in a good home, and learning those lessons we talked about earlier, but just having, a set of 3, and they can vary. It could be the same ones every day, but just having them and thinking for a few minutes, again, it goes back to the humbling yourself and really thinking about what things positively impact your life that you could kind of reflect on.
Yeah, write
You
them
know?
down too if you can. Like that's a big.
Yeah, I used to journal quite a bit when I was younger, but I maybe should pick it back up.
Yeah, we're huge on gratitudes around here. We have a gratitude segment in the intros, and we have a jingle. That is
You
yet
have a jingle.
to yeah, we have a gratitude jingle.
Awesome.
So
That's
yeah,
really fun.
but we're saving that for a special appearance. So
Nice.
anyway, yeah, gratitude for sure. Huge on that. Yeah, 3 a day. Write them down. There's something to putting pen to paper, and I don't know. It's like an extra boost, or whatever. You can think of it. I mean,
Mhm.
which is a good step, but like I don't know, it solidifies it if you write it or something. Even if you're
it
just typing it
creates-
on a keyboard.
Yeah,
you know?
different synapses fire when you're putting pen to paper. You know,
Yep.
like I'm when I used to study, I would write. Like you know, if you had to know 10 parts of something, I would write them down. You know, like when I was in college, like I was taking all these music classes, and you know, like I used to teach myself the mnemonics to learn. You know, to learn my you know, my Greek modes and my scale things, and you know, different stuff like that. But like just writing it down all the time, repetitive writing helped me memorize a lot of stuff. You know, especially that came in handy when I was in the military, because like you know, when you first get there, you're just overwhelmed with information, basic training, and you know, like you got to learn that, you know, the chain of command, and the chain of command can be like really hyper complex in some situations. So like just taking every day and writing it out, you know, when you have some study time, some free time, which you don't get a lot of in boot camp, but you know, just writing out like this is, you know, this is the next level up, and after him is this person, after him is the colonel, and after the colonel is the group commander, and after the group commander is the wing commander, and after that's the, you know, whatever, and it keeps going up larger and larger and larger until you get, and the buck stops at the president. But yeah, just writing things out was very helpful to me in many cases, especially learning, being teachable.
All right, question 5. If I were to ask your best friend, what is one thing they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
So probably no surprise here. I called my best friend and I asked him that very question. And so,
Neat.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Right to the horse's mouth.
Yeah, well, and you know, if it's like, again, it's almost like one of those job interview questions. Like, here's a situation. What would you do? And it's like I didn't want to speak for them because these guys have known me for, you know, decades, and we're very close. And you know, basically that they both. I have more than one best friend, right? But I was talking to 2 different people at the same question, but it both went around. It's like I was very horrible at interrupting people. Like it's like one of those things where a thought hits your brain and you just have to get it out. Like you can't hold it back. And so I sort of readjusted my focus years back, and I worked on that. And then my friend Joshua, like one of my best friends since high school, you know, he says, you know, you used to just talk over people all the time, but in the last few years, maybe the last 10 years or so, like you don't do that anymore. Now he's like, now you're a better listener. And when because you're a better listener, you like respond better to conversations you have. So that would be, you know, like the one thing that I needed to work on was to be a better conversationalist, if you will.
And do you think that had to do with more of like nature instead of like nurture? Because I know the area that you're from, and I think of, you know, Massachusetts, New York, Boston. These are all very loud people in general. So like, could that have just been like, and not to get like cultural commentary here or anything, but
No, you're definitely not. There is something to that. I always say you can take the boy out of Massachusetts, you'll never take the Massachusetts out of the boy. I'm always going to go back to that, you know, that culture, that social culture that Massachusetts has. That's so just radically different from the Midwest. You know, I've lived in the Midwest for about 15 years now, and it's just sometimes things here fascinate me because I'm like, why would you do that? You know, but being from Massachusetts, we handle things differently. But going back to what you're saying, I think part of it is it's habits I picked up from other people in my life, like my dad's very notorious about, cutting people off and just talking or talking completely over someone. And that maybe, you pick up things from you've met my parents, Bill, you see how I'm kind of similar to them. Excuse me, in those ways. So I think it's part culture. Yes. The fast talking, boisterous nature of the East Coast is definitely a factor, but also just, I think, things I picked up over the years. You look to your parents and your elders and those important people, sports coaches, youth leaders and stuff like that, as what a good example is. And sometimes you pick up their bad habits because you, as a child or in development, you're learning about, what's good and bad. But your main teachers really are your parents, right? Like, I'm sure there's habits you picked up from your dad that maybe you're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or maybe it's a good habit. Maybe, my dad did this for a long time. Now I do this too. And it works out great.
So just I don't know, I'm curious about when some of the differences between Midwest and how you guys handled stuff out East. Because I don't know, just being from the Midwest, it's weird to have that experience of being told that something that you've thought was normal your entire life is completely foreign to somebody else, and they're just from the the East Coast, or
right?
whatever.
Well, what I'm gonna say, right? My example. As soon as I say it, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, hot dog rolls.
The what?
Hot dog rolls.
Hot dog rolls. Oh, the buns.
In the Midwest, hot dog buns are sliced horizontally, and in New England they're cut vertically from the top. And it's just like one thing. Like, all right, so in the Midwest, people eat pizza with a knife and a fork. What? No. Why? No, I get the deep dish thing, but
right.
It's those little kind of culture things. People ask me all the time. They're like, "Well, why did you ever move here from like the Boston area?" Because the grass is always greener, right? And I always tell them, I'm like, the roads are in straight lines. Like, you have no idea how helpful and convenient that is. Like, they're really wide. They're in straight lines. You can't get lost in the Midwest. Everything's north, south, east, west. It's hard. If I needed to drive to LaPorte or Kalamazoo or Terre Haute, I know that if I go to Terre Haute, I just go west for a while and then I go south for a little while longer, and eventually I'll get there. Like, it's so that kind of having the benefit of city planning early on in the Midwest.
Look, a war and you need to make runways all the way across your country in case they get bombed is a great way to get a national layout of infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, even before then, like, if you look at like the layout of, let's say, Chicago in just after the Civil War, right? And you look at the same kind of layout from like Boston or New York City. Well, maybe New York City is a bad example, but Boston's a better example. Like, you just see the difference. Like, Chicago looks very square. It's very even. It's sectioned out in a nice way. And then you look at Boston and you're like, the roads go every direction. It's like spaghetti. Everything's really narrow. It goes in all different directions. It's hard to get around, So yeah, but I mean, city planning definitely, like, it's something I appreciate. It's one thing I'm addicted to that not a lot of people realize they are. I'm addicted to like smoothly paved roads and well-planned areas.
Efficiency again.
Yes, I'm a big fan of efficiency.
It makes sense though, right? Like, how much resource can you unlock by making just transport more efficient? Time and lives, which is equated to research and everything, faster, more efficient, less fuel, less wear and tear, less, tire, rubber in the environment, just everything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Plus, it's useful for bicyclists.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing. If I was still living in Massachusetts or on the East Coast, I would have never made the decision to give up my car and ride a bicycle for 4 or 5 years. It's to me out east. It's too dangerous. Like, now, if there was like a situation of I have no motor vehicle in that sense, and I had to ride, then yes, if you have to, you have to. You got to get to work, But I made a decision with living here. I was living in Mishawaka at the time, that I was like, you know what? I'm not making a lot of money. I got to live below my means, so the car's got to go for now, and I'll build myself back up and get into a situation where, you know, I can buy a car later, you know. And Bill has seen sort of my transition over the last few years. I've really kind of climbed out of sort of a hole that I've been sitting in for a long time. And to my point, Bill, I just bought a new car about 3 weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I bought a 2014 Ford Focus.
nice.
So yeah, I actually have a nice car now. It's really cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, very excited. You know,
Yeah, dude.
I feel like you feel like such an adult when that kind of thing happens. You know, you sign
Yeah.
the paperwork and they hand you the key, and you're like, oh, I did that. How did I do that? They're gonna let me get away with this? You know, like.
Oh, dude. Yeah, for sure. How could you forget that feeling? I still remember it.
Yeah. And I paid cash for it too. I own the sucker outright, which is good.
Okay, that's even
Awesome.
better.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do
makes
it.
Makes you feel good. Again, 2020 was very nice to me financially. Like I had some opportunities. You know, I worked at a distillery for a while, helping them make hand sanitizer, like large batches of hand sanitizer. They paid me very handsomely to work for them for 6 or 7 weeks. And, you know, it was nice as my company was shut down, and yeah, so I was able to sock away a little bit of coin so that, you know, after the new year and after all the things, the dust settled, I was ready to scoop something up.
Is it improvise, adapt, and overcome? Is that
Absolutely.
Is that the Air Force thing, or is that just
No, I think that's Marine Corps.
the
That's
Marine
there.
Corps? Yeah.
Yeah, but Air Force is like aim high or something. I don't
Uh,
know. We weren't big on slogans when I was in the Air Force. I mean,
Right.
maybe now it's a different military than I joined. I joined up in 1998 and got out in 2004. So a lot's changed.
Do you think you would have went into Space Force today?
Space Force.
If it was around back then, would you go Space
If it was around back then, probably, because it's interesting, it's exciting. To maybe be on the cutting edge of something like that, like to help be that group that sort of establishes. You know, I love Air Force history, and you go back to, like, you know, after World War II till 1947 when the National Security Act was signed. There was that 3-year period of they're getting the kind of people together and they're getting ready because they knew that was coming. They knew that the Air Force was going to be a separate thing. So, like, being a part of that kind of generation of airmen, to be on that kind of that new push. We're making our own trail, and we're making our own traditions, and we already have some. There's a lot of carryover from when they were part of the Army. But like, no, I think Space Force would be interesting. I don't think it's such a ridiculous idea. A lot of people do. They're like, why don't we need a Space Force? They're like, I get the idea of it, and I think it'd be really cool to kind of be on board with that.
It seems to me like
Be that
the military would have it as a focus anyways, because if I look at trying to defend ourselves, right, whether it be from an asteroid, you know, if you got everything locked down here, what about other things from outer space, you know? I mean, clearly they've had an interest in the tic-tac stuff is just a continuation of that. So, you know,
Right.
to me, it would make sense that you would want just as much outward looking as you would inward looking, because I mean, we are projecting a massive amount of radio waves and other things and radar waves and everything else into space that is detectable. So yeah, to me, it's
Right.
kind of like, you know, we are a beacon. We should probably be outward looking just as much. That's why, if we're not doing it already, I am excited that there's a Space Force to kind of take up that task.
Right. And I also understand it this way. I believe, and I could be wrong here, so if I'm wrong, please don't, you know, take my head off. But I believe that the Space Force is in a similar situation that the Marines are, where the Marines are kind of a larger detachment of the Navy. They're not their own separate
Right.
branch. They're underneath the command of the Department of the Navy. But they're, you know, obviously it's own entity, right? And I believe that Space Force has a similar relationship with the Air Force.
Oh yeah. Well, look,
you know?
the Air Force itself has its own space program. So they've been
And that's
flying the
basically.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you,
no.
but that's basically what I was getting at, is that they took their existing Air and Space. It was called Air and Space Command. It's a large group of the Air Force, and they took that and basically they're making that into Space Force. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Like they're taking what they already have. Like I said, with the Air Force, before it was the Air Force, it was the Army Air Corps. It was a detachment of the Army. They kind of just took that and moved it here and put a new label on it. Now grew it into what it is today. You know.
Yeah, we need more
But
land
no,
forces.
I think Space
aka
Force would be fascinating to be a part of.
Well, let's hope so. We need to start getting out there. It's been long enough, you know.
Yeah, I'm a little long in the tooth for that. That's a young man's game, but
Yeah,
you know,
you could be a guardian of the galaxy.
yeah, I think that's what they're calling their enlisted ranks as guardians.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't done much reading on it, so I only hear things, on little
Yeah.
blips here and there. But
Anyway, what are you most curious about?
everything. I'm a curious individual as a rule, but I mean, really, I was like one of the most things that I really am kind of fascinated with is I've had this obsession with stand-up comedy since I was like a teenager, and like just how they do what they do, and not just like that. Yeah, they get up there and they tell a joke and it's funny, but as we all know, that some of them are Dave Chappelle's and some of them are that guy at the the place up the street at the open mic. There's kind of a everyone starts out here and people work themselves into it, and I'm always I love hearing, like, if you listen to podcasts or you listen to comedians and interviews, they always talk about like this process of like they start off here and they work on this and their process of like developing themselves into something at a higher level over time. It's like working out. No one shows up the first day of trying to work out and they're trying to bench press 400 pounds. You got to work up to it. And just a process of like how stand-up comedians do what they do, and kind of those like that kind of pecking order. The younger guys learn from the older guys, and the guys that have been in the game a while, and they all take lessons from each other about what their level of success will be, and just in a general way. Like, I mean, last night I spent 3 hours watching comedy specials, just because I enjoy it so much. So
Yeah, dude, that whole subculture is, I don't know. I share that curiosity too, but
I bet you guys probably thought I was going to say like true crime or something, right?
yeah, it's a close
I'm
second.
kidding. No, I really enjoy, like, it's the process. Like, that's what I'm curious about, is their process. Like,
Right.
how they get
And
from
you can only
rank
really
amateur to
right, and you can only really see. I really enjoyed going to the local comedy store in town, and like because that's where you can see the people work. If you enjoy the process and the art and the journey, like that's where they work out
yeah,
all the
yeah,
shitty
and you could
parts
see
on
like a
stage.
base level, and you could see those folks kind of grow into it over
And then
a period of time.
and then if you keep going, you can watch them progress and get better. Like it's kind of neat. So support local comedy if you can. If
Absolutely,
they're still
yeah.
doing it. I mean, everything's
No, I haven't. I don't know. I went to one, and that was a while back, but I don't know who's doing what. I know they've had comedy shows, like outdoor ones, like at the Indiana Whiskey Company. They have, like, they open up the garage door in the loading dock, and that's their stage, and everyone
you can
sits
do a comedy
outside and
show
socially
anywhere.
distances. Yeah. So I went to a couple of those. Those are pretty cool.
All right. Question number 7. What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
Well, a long time ago, I was a teenager. I was working at a summer camp. It was my first summer working there, and I was kind of we'll say annoying. That's a nice way to put it. But I was a 14-year-old punk kid, and towards the end of the year, we have a banquet at the very end, like a nice meal. Some funny stuff happens. There's some ceremony, and just on a whim, people decided that I needed to be thrown into the lake in my full Boy Scout uniform and stuff. Retribution for a whole summer of me being just a pill, you know. And I just that was just like one. It was just to me, it was horrible. Like, why would you ever do that? Now in hindsight, as an adult, I can be like, well, I deserve it. But at the time, I was just like mortified and so hurt by it, and it was just really super embarrassing because now everyone knows. It's not like it's something you got caught doing or you could hide from. Like everybody, all 50 people that were there as staff members of this camp, and it's like I couldn't hide from it, and I tried to, but overall, I decided not to give up on it entirely, and I returned the following summer, and try to learn from those lessons, and then
Wow.
kids are annoying and
Did
stupid.
you at that age return with the thought of trying to learn from those lessons?
That's a good question.
Because I know Scouts is a pretty powerful thing. It really does instill that way of thinking in you when you're young, and to not be embarrassed of
that
it.
constant improvement.
Yeah.
I don't know if necessarily. I knew there were points in the off season during the school year where I was like, you know what, F that place. I'll maybe get a job at CVS for the summer or whatever. Maybe find another summer job, work at an amusement park or golf course or whatever. Find a different thing. And then I just, as it kept getting closer and closer to that kind of commitment date in the springtime of, hey, are you coming or are you not? I eventually just said, you know what, as much as these bad things happened, I know there's a whole lot of good that happened to me too. So, I decided to kind of continue on with it. Like my parents left it up to me. Like they wouldn't force me to, no, you're going to summer camp and you're going to work there. And, that they're very kind of like, you do what you want to do, but you're going to have a job. Like you're not just going to hang around for the summer. But yeah, I don't know if necessarily I went there with the intention of, all right, new year, new me, I'm going to improve. But I did definitely improve. And there were situations that kind of forced me to improve. So yeah.
It's awesome. You got to walk into the fire.
Yeah. And in a lot of respects in my life and in other things, especially with things like jobs and careers and such, I've never really been afraid to fail at it. Like I've never been afraid to show up, try something completely new, and then after an amount of time, be like, this isn't for me. Like I don't take that as that I'm a failure. That it's or like a couple of years ago, I worked as a machinist, and I learned very valuable lessons working for this company. And the one main lesson I learned is I'm not a good machinist. It's not the right kind of focus for me, the right kind of detail oriented thing that I need. So like learning in situations where you can look at it and be like, all right, I failed. No big deal. Now I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. Now I know like what hurdles to jump over and what to move around. All those lessons kind of over time, it keeps snowing those little lessons. And then eventually it turns into a glacier.
Right on.
I didn't know if you got it. I was like, hello?
No, I'm sorry. I was taking notes. Lost my spot. We're on question number 8. What is your greatest fear and how did you overcome it?
I put a lot of thought into this one because it's like you could have that physical fear, like I'm afraid of spiders or I'm afraid of heights. I'm a little bit scared of heights, like I'm not a big fan of spiders, but I was really thinking deep and like, honestly, it's that ethereal fear of having to admit to my parents that I failed and I have to come back home. You know what I mean? You're out in a thing, something happens, and then like, hey, my brother's apartment caught fire many years ago, and he had to live with my mom and dad in his 30s for like a couple of years until he kind of figured it back out. That really is my biggest fear. Is like being in a position where I have to kind of. I don't want to even. My parents will always. They'll never turn me down. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, well, you're an adult now, figure it out. There's always a way, but I've never cashed in that scratch ticket. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've always been very proud of the fact that I could kind of maintain myself. I moved out of my folks' house when I was 18. I'm now 40. That's 22 years of me figuring it out on my own. And just that it is a fear. It's a legit fear. I tell people in certain situations where it's like, look, if I lose my job, my mom's not going to pay my rent. I can't just sleep on her couch. Like, she's 1,000 miles away. It puts me in a position where I'm a little more cautious than some with things like, like I have a little bit of a savings, a little rainy day fund. And it also kind of, lights that fire under me. That's like, I got to stay motivated. I have to do a good job at work because I can't afford to lose, and things like that. That's just like the whole, like, I don't know. It's, everyone throws around the adulting word, right? But the whole thing is just like, I'm almost proving it to myself that I'm capable of supporting myself, of living, of feeding myself, and now I have offspring to take care of as well, so that providing lessons for them that, hey, you get up and go to work those same lessons my parents, taught me. You go to work every day, do a good job, be a good person, you shovel your sidewalk, you say hi to the mailman, whatever, but having that fear of just like, I have to make that call and say, yeah, I can't, I need help. Being that humble to ask for help. But especially in the circumstance of like, I'm living in my car and I need a place, like, it's getting to and I've always kind of been able to weather those situations and not have to make that phone call.
So now, like, at what point does it, I don't know, stop becoming a fear? And like, have you overcome it? Like,
it's less so now. I won't say I've completely overcome it. But it's definitely less so now that I'm more stable. But when you and I first met about 5 years ago, that was a very legit fear. I wasn't making any money. I was a bicycle mechanic making pennies on the dollar, really. And I had a roommate, and then my roommate all of a sudden was like, "Hey, I'm moving in with my girlfriend. You got to figure it out in a month." And I'm like, there the anxiety comes. I'm like, but now I have a more stable, higher paying job, first of all. And just there's a lot of boxes on my life chart that I've checked off that kind of ensure sort of a safety net, if you will, from having that situation. So the fear is less, but I wouldn't say I've actually overcome it. But it's definitely still way back in the recesses, but it's not something I think about every day. But again, those things I'm grateful for. One of those things a lot of times ends up being I'm gainfully employed and I earn enough that I don't have to have that fear be at the front of my brain like it was, 5, 10, almost 15 years ago,
Yeah. Right on. Question number 9. What quality do you most admire in a man? Why?
Well, I would say the ability to admit that you were wrong. And maybe that, what I'm saying? If you as a man, like there's pride, there's bravado, there's this machismo with some men where it's like they couldn't possibly admit that they made a mistake, that they were wrong about something, that they didn't have the right response to something maybe. But I've shown really very much respect to men in my life, whether colleagues or role model types, leaders and coaches that can admit, all right, I was wrong about that. I didn't see it that way, or I didn't realize that this was the answer. Being able to admit that to yourself. You're reducing yourselves in your own status, because with men, there's some research to suggest that men are, especially with communication, like we're status driven. We have the nice car, we have the membership at the expensive golf club. My dad can beat up your dad, kind of stuff. But if you can admit you're wrong, you're sort of reducing yourself in status. You're and again getting humble, and being humble enough to accept that you're wrong, that you've been defeated. That's always, when someone does that, they're like, you know what, man, I was wrong. I screwed that up. I was misguided. So let's, and then you make a change to overcome that. I'm going to try this, or we're going to email that, or whatever, whatever the cause is.
Yeah. As soon as you refuse to accept ownership over a mistake, you're not improving. You're taking steps backwards to defend an inefficiency in it.
Right.
It's not good.
Yeah. And it causes harm in a lot of places. It mistrust, being maybe at the top of that list. If you can't admit that you're wrong, how can I trust you when you're right all the time? It can create a lot of social unease. Like I'm trying to think of an example. I can't really come up with a good one, but there have been, there was one time I got in an argument with the guy about some music thing. And, he claimed that I went and saw this thing called G3. It's, all these, Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and this other guitarist, Yngwie Malmsteen, toured around. And I called it the show off show because it's just, they can do amazing things with guitars. But when I went and saw that particular thing, it was Kenny Wayne Shepherd had filled in for this person, Yngwie Malmsteen. And I was telling my friend about it. He's like, no way, dude. That's not what it, and he just vehemently argued. Nope, it was this. That's what, I was like, dude, I was there. I saw it. And then later on, he, this is back before we all had Google in our pocket, right? He had done his research and he came back to me a while later and he was like, you know what, man, I stand corrected. I looked it up and you're right. On that tour, it was this person. And I was like, much respect, that you could admit that you're wrong. Like, you know what I mean? And if he came to me, he was like, hey, I looked it up and it was like this. Maybe I have to admit that I was wrong. So just a lot of this comes back down to
humility.
Yeah, exactly. Humility, being humble. Like humbling yourself in the right ways it just smooths things out, man. You smooth out some wrinkles like that, and I'm never afraid to admit I'm wrong, like if I make a mistake at work or screw something up, I'll go to my boss and I'll admit it freely. Like, hey boss, I screwed up real bad. Need your help.
It's easier to do than to lie about it and try to cover it up.
or wait for someone else is going to find out. You know what I mean? Like I may have made a mistake, but might not find out about it for 3 or 5 weeks because the customer needs to find it, and that kind of thing. But yeah, just, admitting that you're wrong is a big one for me. Taking ownership or taking that responsibility for your actions, even for your thoughts, for the way you see things. I think that's something everybody could, use a little more of is that kind of that ownership of, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're completely wrong. Just admitting that you may have been, I've smoothed over more arguments with people by being like, all right, I could be wrong, and
yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a good tool to have to mediate situations.
Right.
Question number 10. Who were or are your role models and why?
I don't know. I think I went more on the personal side instead of like being like Michael Jordan, Tom Brady or something, like I was like, those could be role models for me. Like, Captain Picard was a good role model for me, the stoic English commander of the Enterprise.
It's a great series.
But yeah. I mean, and any of those Star Trek, captains, they all have something you can draw from. But no, I have a couple. One of them is my uncle, my dad's younger brother. He was a colonel in the Air Force, and I've always really just looked up to him. Like he's very cool. Like him and I have always gotten along well. He's always treated me very, very cool and fairly. And yeah, and just having when we were in the Air Force together, and at the same time when I joined up, he was stationed at a base, a half an hour down the road from where I was training. So there was a lot of weekends where we'd hang out and get together. And I've always respected him as a the head of his family, as a member of the officer corps, just in general. And he's great, like we have a great relationship today. I'll call him up every now and again just to shoot the breeze with him and see what's going on. And, and it's like, I'm kind of his favorite nephew and he's kind of my favorite uncle. You know what I mean? We have that, relationship. And then, I had a teacher in high school, taught geology, and he taught like other kind of earth and space sciencey stuff. He taught astronomy and different things, physical science mostly. And I just looked up to him. Like he's the one that motivated me, that when I went to college, I tried to be, I was working towards being a science teacher. I wanted to be a person that could impact students in the way that he impacted me, because he was just such a cool teacher that, yeah, just, Mr. Powers, what a dude, man. Like my freshman year, I took geology and I knew I was always kind of a geeky, sciencey kid, but I didn't realize how much until like I was taking. So every year when you go to pick your course selection, I'd always, regardless of what it was, I would find a class Mr. Powers was teaching. and that kind of thing. And I would always make sure that I got, at least one semester out of the year, I was in one of his classrooms in a fashion, because I just loved him as a teacher. And he was just, those role models. I mean, teachers are a big deal. You're exposed to so many of them over, the what is it, 14, 15 years of typical education, right? So there's so many to choose from. What makes Mr. Powers stand out is we both shared a love of science, of astronomy, of that kind of stuff, of gravity and planets and geology and dinosaurs and all that stuff. So
Yeah, I really like it when when people have this as their answers, like instead of like you were saying, Michael Jordan or whoever, it's people that they have personal knowledge of.
right,
So, like,
right.
because
And I thought too that if I was going to do this I didn't want to come at this with like, oh, I'm just going to answer some goofy questions. I really wanted to put some thought into it and give you guys an honest answer.
right,
And a lot of these answers come from a very personal place. So I wanted to make sure that my role model could be, it could be, I don't know, maybe like an Olympic athlete if I wanted it to
right.
be. But that's not who my role models were. My role models were family members and teachers and peers and that type of thing.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with having people that you don't have personal knowledge of as your role model, but for this show in particular, I think I just find it extra cool in a sense, because those are the people, like, we encourage our listeners to go out and have these conversations with their, like people like you just talked about, your professor, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the other.
My uncle,
Your uncle,
the
yes.
colonel, my uncle,
Yeah.
the colonel. I still call him the colonel to this day.
Right.
And
So
both
it's
him
like
and I have been out of the military forever,
Right. So it's like these type of people that we want other listeners to reach out to, that they have in their own lives, and sit down and have the conversation and record it and send it to us so we can share it with everybody. And it's just I don't know, I just think it's a nice way to, in a sense, pay homage to the people that have had an impact in our lives.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's another project or another aspect of this project, I guess.
And they're not necessarily like just those two examples. They're not necessarily like the pinnacle of success in their particular fields, or to them that could be their, my uncle always wanted he wanted to get to be general, but he got to a point in his career where he's like, yeah, it's not going to happen, and I've done my time, it's time to go, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, I chose my uncle because he was successful in the military or in business or what have you. I chose Mr. Powers because he had an impact on me and motivated me. He motivated me to, anytime you want to look at someone and step into their shoes, and, me trying, I did go to college for a few years to try and be a science teacher, because of teachers like Mr. Powers. And, I joined the Air Force because of, my uncle made it look so cool to be in the military, like there's a plethora of reasons why you do that. But, just having those role models, those examples were very critical to me.
Absolutely. Alrighty, question 11. What institution of society or structural aspect of modern life would you change given the chance?
Again, another one I put some thought into, and then I basically an institution of society, and I don't want to make it too political here because that's not my intention, but I believe that in our political system, this two-party system we have, where there's like this choice or that choice, and I can't tolerate it. It's just so unnerving to me that two people is not a choice. Two candidates is not a choice. I want like 8 or 9 candidates from 8 or 9 different ways of looking at things. I feel like having more variety it's a better way. It like everyone's like looking for a way to kind of reunite the country or reknit us back together, and having this guy or that guy and both sides think the other side is evil is just, oh, it hurts my stomach sometimes. I mean, I guess that I'm not trying to say one way or the other. I'm not even claiming
No, I think that most people would agree that there's changes that could be made for the betterment of of everybody. What those look like, I mean, that's up for debate, but I
Right.
think the general idea that, you know, there's always room for improvement.
Right.
everybody
And
can
then
agree
there's
on.
always room for another voice too. You know, it's the stranglehold that these two entities have is very strong, but it's like, you know, I don't like to assume that I look at someone and be like, oh, they vote this way. And they drive a Subaru and they have a coexist sticker on the back bumper. Of course they're a, you know, whatever, a liberal, a Democrat, whatever. Or, you know, they drive a pickup truck and blah, blah, blah. So they gotta be some, you know, conservative hardcore. Like, I know people are more dynamic than that. And I know you and I have had many, many discussions about politics and things. But, you know, I don't feel like either of those groups represent me. And there's small pieces of me that are represented, but not, you know, and there's other smaller detachments. But I just think, like, you know, places like Canada or the United Kingdom or Germany or other developed nations that have a democratic system in place, you know, they have multiple parties from multiple viewpoints. And it's not just it's this guy or it's that guy, you know, it's like we treated politics like a boxing match for so long, and it's really not a boxing match. It's more of a marathon, you know?
Yeah. I mean, boxing, it's a good analogy for the way it feels like, for the way things have been lately.
Yeah. Cause it's like a one-on-one thing. It's this versus that. And it's never like, there's a whole group of us trying to achieve a goal, you know? And that's how I see it as, you know, whether it's politics or business or whatever, there's multiple different layers, you know, and to be kind of pushed into the throngs of, you have to accept this. And if you do accept this, you have to hate that, and vice versa. And it comes from both ends. The discourse has, you know, kind of been on shaky ground for such a long time. That I really feel like if we had more representation of ideas, you know, then, you know, I think it would allow people to be, you know, less polarized in a way. But at the same time, be able to find something that more lines up with who you are, you know, and what your goals would be for your elected official, or how you feel that these situations should be handled. Like, one of my big issues is veterans issues. I tend to lean more towards the person that's going to pay more attention to veterans care, you know, and improving the lives of that subset of our culture, right? And, you know, sometimes that person is a conservative, and sometimes that person is a liberal, and sometimes that person's like a libertarian that no one's paying attention to. And you're like, whoa, but this guy has such good ideas. You know what I mean? Like I feel like just having one or the other, and because it's such a large, like I said, boxing match, it's that one-on-one. So I think people that, you know, politicians are adopting ideas that they don't necessarily feel a way about, but they're adopting it because if they don't, then they're going to lose that whole glob, you know, and they need that whole glob to get to a point where they can affect change. But they've been playing the game for so long that when they get able to affect change, they continue to play the game because, you know, it's kind of a snake eating its own tail in a way, you know?
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, I try to keep it apolitical. I wasn't trying to say one, you know, go with this or that, but like the system itself, I feel like really needs to be revamped, you know, and to move it into more of a multi-layered, you know, series of options, if you will.
For sure. Room for improvement. Question number 12. What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
Yeah, this one was a tough one for me because it's like I could point to 100 examples of when someone, like, you know, I was, as an example, I was getting off the bus one day in my hometown in the downtown area, and I got off the bus and there was this dude smacking the crap out of his girlfriend or wife, whoever, like just beating up this woman, like slapping her around and shouting at her. And like 3 dudes got off the bus and they were like, "Hey, this ends right now. Get the F out." You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't care. They were like, "Just go." Or, you know, and there's 3 of us that are going to punch your face. Like, which do you want? And, I was like, that's really brave. But again, is it that courageous? Because, you have and I don't want to sound like that these people these men didn't do the right thing, but, there was 3 of them and they're big guys. So what's the threat there? Are they courageous because the situation allows for them to be? But, I think me personally, one of the most courageous things I did was not fighting my ex on the breakup, like the woman I had children with. Like, instead of getting into a big fight about, you can't leave me and blah, blah, blah. I sat down, I listened to what she had to say. And I had to admit to myself that the conversation, I wasn't liking what I was hearing, but it felt right. And I at that moment decided, okay, this is what's happening. Let's move on. There's no need to start dragging this out or making it worse than it has to be. She's obviously in distress. I'm obviously in distress. Clearly there's a disconnect in our relationship. But like, just begrudgingly embracing what was happening. So, there's a lot of unknowns now. It's like, now I got to find a place to live, and what's going to happen with our children, and how often am I going to see them, and what's my role going to be in their life now? Because now that, she, at the time, the obvious choice was that she has the basically the custody, right, if you will. So now it becomes like, what role, let me put it to you this way. I was concerned about how I would be limited by her, like what her boundaries were going to be. Are we going to have that, you can't see the kids this weekend because you didn't pay your child support? Or are we going to have a thing where it's like, we can be adults and I can call her and be like, hey, things are kind of tight this week. I'll give you a double payment next week or next month or whatever, and we're very good with that. So that's, in my head, it was very courageous of me to not dig in my heels and start the fight.
Yeah, you kept your cool in a very uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, and but there's other things too. Like, I pulled a lady out of a car, not knowing that car was in serious danger of explosion. It was a big wreck on a highway. I was in Florida, driving back to Georgia, and I was on I think maybe not I-75, I-95, one of those, and it was just outside of, I believe, Tallahassee, and a truck moved over, and it didn't clear the vehicle next to him, and it hit this SUV, and the SUV spun out, and the lady on my left slammed right in and just T-boned it. I was like, whoa. So I pull over, I jump out of the car, and, and I'm kind of just like trying to assess the situation. I mean, it's a highway. It's dark outside. Like, we need to get someone out here with flashy things and road flares. Like, we need to let people know, don't come barreling through. So, and stuff like that. But I ended up taking this lady out of her car. She couldn't open the door, but it wasn't like a jaws of life situation. And the window was already smashed. So I just kind of helped her, climb out of her window. And then we kind of got there. And then, after a few minutes, thankfully, the state police barracks was like half a mile away. So we had someone out there almost immediately. And then the fire department showed up, and the fire department was like, thank God you took that lady out of the car, because the gas tank had cracked and it was leaking fuel all over the ground. It just takes one little spark for that whole thing to just be, get annihilated. So there's levels of courageous. Like, sometimes, I've seen people respond in good and bad ways to both courageous and non-courageous situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just keeping a cool head in situations, whether it's like physically, like because you had two kind of spectrum going on here. Like, you had a very concrete example with like the car accident or whatever happened on the highway, and then something with a relationship. And in both situations, you're able to navigate it well because you didn't freak out and try to fight, what had happened or what was happening at that moment or whatever.
Well, and I guess it could come back to that beginning of our conversation, that first question, where it's like, be teachable, and be humble, and don't always assume you have the right answer, is another way of putting that. I've done some courageous things. I feel like my level of courageous may not be someone else's, and that's okay. Like, we all have different kind of wavelengths of what, the right and wrong is. Like that day I was talking about, we had that microburst at the summer camp I worked at. And one of the first things I was doing was, in crisis, I'm the calm one. Like everyone else is kind of panicking and the fight or flight kind of kicks in, the adrenaline, and I'm like just calm. Like everyone else is freaking out, and I'm the one with the level head. Like, all right, we're gonna go here. I'm gonna move to that. What's the priority? People. Are people trapped? Are people okay? Are they injured? If we do have people, are they ambulatory? Can we move them, or do we need to get apparatus to move them out? It's just in my head. I'm troubleshooting that situation. And even though I didn't do any like super duper first aid, I saved this guy's life thing, but being able to maintain a level of calm. And sometimes when your body gets flooded with adrenaline, it's hard to think. You can't really process. You know what I mean? What the situation? It could be very sobering, but at the same time be very, like scary, because you're firing off on all these cylinders, and you're just kind of like, oh, what do I do? And there's that freeze moment some people get, and I've gotten it too. I'm not a special case. So, but sometimes things happen, and you just like, all right, react. How to prioritize this? What's the first thing you do? You have any kind of accident, or call it disaster if you will, but you kind of assess the situation. You survey the scene. Like when I was teaching CPR, the first thing you do is survey the scene, because you don't know why that guy's laying on the ground. He may have stepped on an open electrical circuit. Always kind of look around and see what's what. And to me, like having the ability to think reasonably and cautiously and clearly in an emergency situation is, in my eyes, definitely a courageous thing.
Yeah, I agree. Question 13. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
It's not just one thing. It's multifaceted. There's so many different, like, to my daughters, I'm a man. I am the example of masculinity that they are probably going to judge every man they meet for the rest of their lives on. So I have a responsibility to show them what good men do, how to act. Like I remember when I was a kid growing up, like some of the other dads, they'd be around and there'd be that kind of locker room boys chatter, and the way some of these men would talk about women was like, dude, it made me uncomfortable as a boy, and I realized it was a time ago, but even still these days, there is a level of appropriate that you kind of have to, that line you have to toe. But also there's other sides of it too. Like right now, what it is to be a man it's scary. It's a little scary, because there are natural inclinations, and there's this like push for men and boys to not be men and boys. And there's this also, on the antithesis of that, there's this embrace of pushing girls to do more masculine things, not necessarily be more masculine, but to be in the STEM fields, and to if they want to race cars. But there's also a push for boys to suppress those same instincts, those same interests, those same urges. And I'm not saying it's like a widespread thing, but it's I don't believe it's not something to be suppressed. I believe we can encourage a more positive masculinity, especially with boys, like teaching them the right way, because by the time you're 12, 13, you kind of have an idea of what it is. But then you're flooded with all those hormones, and then, any idea of what appropriate is kind of can kind of be pushed to the side in a way. I mean, we're all teenagers once. You guys know what I mean. Like sometimes it's damn hard being a teenage boy, but I do think also that in a positive light, that men have actually become a lot more progressive. We're seeing a lot more stay-at-home dads. They call it the "I love you, dad" generation. Guys like my age that have kids. There's more domestic responsibility that men are sharing in. Maybe their burden to earn as the sole earner is less, because now you may have a spouse or a partner that's also earning. So that creates more of a family time. So the idea of what dads used to be when we were growing up versus what they are now is radically different. But what does it mean? I mean, it means a lot, and there's not just one thing. It also means that as men, we need to be willing to make some changes. We need to be willing to look at our gender in a critical way, that we could say, all right, maybe it's time to, I don't know, there's not really one example or another. Like, there was that Gillette commercial a year or two ago that was, boys will be boys, and this is a behavior we need to get away from. Like, let's start being men. Let's start being the best men, and I kind of, a lot of people didn't like it, but I really liked that message there. It was like, hey, this old way, that's the old way. Let's work on the new. And, and being a part of it, and I'm not.
Well, I think what people had a problem with, I don't know, with that Gillette commercial was the guy that was stopped didn't even, like, he was just, there was no chance for him to do anything. Like, he would, what if he just walked up and said hi, and they struck up a nice conversation and something beautiful came out of that. And it was just the assumption that he was going to be a bigot. Like,
Right.
There's like
Right.
that to me is.
Yeah. And making that assumption is always wrong. Like, I try not to make assumptions. I try not to judge people. I try not to, and hey, I'm guilty. I do. I'm not perfect. Some guy, and I'm like, dude, look at what this dude's wearing. Are you kidding me? But, there are times too. Like, overall, what I took from that commercial was that what they're saying is as you as an individual could be sort of a turnkey in a situation. Years and years ago, I was at a tiny club down the road here, right over by Notre Dame's campus. And I was hanging out with some girls, from my girlfriend taught at St. Mary's. So some of her students were just having some drinks. And this one guy that was hanging out with the ladies, I saw him, reach into his pocket, pull something out, hover over the drink for a second, right back in his pocket. And I was like, and in my head, I'm like, did I just see that? Because as much as I'd like to be naive, I'm like, I know these kind of situations happen. And, I was just like, I went over there, and as soon as he put that drink on the table, like, I was coming out of the bathroom, and I just ran over and grabbed it and took it, and I dumped it on the floor. I was like, nope, not today. So being that person that could kind of sort of wedge in there and prevent those bad situations from happening, or to, maybe like that one, the guy in the commercial that was like, dude, come on, don't say that. You know what I mean? Or, act right. What are you doing? That's not cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
Standing up, like saying when something needs to be said, say it.
Yes.
Yes.
And especially in the context of men and women.
Well, and also being observant enough of your environment that you could see something like that where you're not buried into a screen or something.
Right. And, I remember watching, I think it was one of these news specials where, they have the hidden camera show, and they did kind of a similar thing in a bar, and they, these people would pretend to put, whatever, something in someone's drink. And like, out of all the men that sort of witnessed this, there was like, out of like, I don't know, maybe 20 people that saw what was going on, there was only one guy to stand up and be like, hey, what did you put in there? You can't do that. Like, a lot of men are like, not my business, and kind of move on, and I've done it too. And not in the context of that, but, just other situations where it's like, this is uncomfortable for me, but it's really, is it my place to speak up? And what we're learning now is, yes, it absolutely is. And you should speak up.
Yeah, dude, I agree. All right. So we're going to roll into the bonus questions.
The bonus. I like the bonus. You sure I haven't gone on too long?
Nope. We are good. Right. Bonus question 1. What quality do you most admire in a woman?
In a woman?
Yes.
Oh, I did not prepare for this. So, I mean, the fact that they can create people, that's something amazing, right? They have the babies. Every person you've ever looked at and that's ever lived came out of a woman. That's pretty fascinating. And it's also something to be respected. You should humble yourself before that. And I know you don't have any children, Bill, but if you do, and you're able to see that unfold, see a birth and be with a woman throughout a pregnancy, it's good grief, it's definitely it's a fascinating, humbling, and terrifying situation, like, and it's wonderful, and it brings you such joy, but there's also this like anxiety and fear, and there's a little bit of like this unknown, like, like I didn't expect my girlfriend to shake that much during labor. Like I was like, is she okay? Do we need to call someone? And they're like, no, staff. Like I thought she was having a seizure, and like, so just that, I mean, that quality of a woman, the fact that they are the child bearers, like that they are physically needed to bring this life, obviously, it takes two to tango, right? But one of them's growing the baby, and that's something to be admired.
Yeah, that's a part of the, it's part of the spectrum that we don't have any experience with. Like we can't.
Right.
So yeah, that is something to be
yeah,
kind of awe-inspiring.
and I would never want to put myself in their shoes on that. That's that's
Right.
it's just that's kind of that what is it, the coming of age, if you will. That's, but you know what I mean, like that's something that
experience,
initiations, yeah. So that's something that women have and men will never share in, and that's okay. But it's also, that is if that, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm stuttering. If that is a quality to be admired, that would definitely be the number one on my list.
Yeah, dude, good answer. Bonus question 2. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think that it's important?
I always take responsibility when I screw up. Always. Even if it costs me my job or money or what have you. It doesn't have to be a work thing, but like I worked for that machine shop, and I told you guys I wasn't a great machinist. And hey, it got to a point where there were some times where I had to sit up in the boss's office and explain myself, and I never once tried to make something up or make an excuse. I just said, "Yep, I screwed up. I'm sorry. This is what happened. I'll do better. I'll try not to let it happen again." And just being responsible, taking ownership for your own behavior, activity.
Just being honest.
That's definitely a rule for me. That's a golden rule. And also be nice, because you never know what kind of day someone's had.
Yeah, you gotta
I try and be super nice to people.
Give them the benefit of the doubt for sure.
And I got that from Louis Anderson. Said that. He said his mother used to always say, "Be nice, because you never know what kind of day someone's had." And I took that in, and I was like,
it's true.
There was I was walking down the street just yesterday. I was walking up the road, had to stop at the 7-Eleven real quick. This one guy was coming past me, and the roads are slippery and icy, and the weather here is pretty cold and whatnot. And he just looked up and he said, "Hey man, be safe out there." And I was like, "Thanks, buddy." It's just that was very nice of him to say so. Like he showed concern for me as a human, and I respected that. So just being nice to people is another rule that I always follow. Like, now there are times when you have to be not nice, but for the most part, I try and be the better man, if you will, like to, show people. I don't just step over the homeless guy and chortle that this person's an inconvenience to me. Like I'm usually the guy that like, has a conversation. Like I gave a dude who was addicted to meth a pair of clean socks and underwear. I used to ride a bike so much that it was always good to have a Ziploc bag with a change of clothes in it. And I just, here you go, buddy. Like just, being that one little thing. And I can't say it changed his life, but it made him more comfortable that night. He had some clean clothes to put on,
I was gonna say made a difference that day for sure.
Yeah. I didn't give him money, but I gave him something tangible that showed that, hey, I give a crap about you. I was like, "Hey, would you like a dude? They're totally, I know they're mine, but they're clean. They've been washed. You can, do what you will, put them on, enjoy it. Like what better feeling than to put on a fresh, clean pair of socks,
Oh, dude, it's the best. I love it.
Isn't it the best, right?
Yeah.
When you buy new socks, isn't that the best? The best 6 days you've had is putting on a fresh new pair every day. Oh, it's so good.
I knew I wasn't the only one that enjoyed that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Adam has no comment on feet or socks.
No.
I have neither feet nor socks.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Next topic. What would you tell your teenage self?
don't be so quick to assume that you have control over what's happening. There were times as a teenager where I thought I had things under control, and in hindsight is 2020, right? You look back on it and you're like, I had no idea what I was doing, Yeah, don't be so, snap judgments are not your thing. So maybe relax on that, like you start seeing a girl and she's like, yeah, my last boyfriend used to yell at me, and I'm like, I'll beat that dude up, like that's kind of a reaction, and your testosterone's going off the charts when you're 15, 16, but just not being so quick to make a snap judgment, and also in another way to remember that while this seems tedious and complicated and ridiculous, and as many of us felt in our teenage years, that there is light at the end of those tunnels. I know a lot of kids today, children of friends and things like that. They're high school students, and I've talked to people that work in school, like school counselors and teachers, and they're like, these kids just have this like depression nowadays. They're depressed. They're not getting like their experiences, that like learning how to kind of navigate those waters was a big part of our coming of age, right? You're going to deal with the bully, and you're going to deal with the breakup, and you're going to deal with, the good stuff too, but just remaining focused that at the end of this, there is a next level. There is something else, and try not to be too mired down in what's going on now, and remembering that those little micro lessons that you're learning and those little experiences that you're having. Because, high school is kind of a microcosm of a larger society, right? So those little things that are happening there's relief coming. And it may not seem like it sometimes, but, you can definitely take a little comfort knowing that as you age, things get better, things may get easier. They get a little less complicated in some ways,
Yeah. Teenager years are just tough. Bonus question 4. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
The performance. I'm a musician. You've been to a couple of my gigs. You've seen what I do. That's the ultimate. Like, I'm so excited and giddy and just, I can't wait. That kind of the idea of, well, not the idea, but the actual performance. So you build up when you're rehearsing, you're playing at open mics maybe, or other things as a musician. You're learning new stuff. Learning something new and having that in your bag of tricks as a musician is always a great, like, once you learn something new, you'll have it. But that performance, all that extra work you do and money you spend and time and effort and education, to me, all comes down to that performance. You spent hundreds and thousands of hours playing, learning, but then you get the showcase. It's your recital. You get to come at it with, there's some aplomb and a little bit, you got to be a little cocksure and a little swagger about you to get up in front of a bunch of strangers and not only perform, but perform in a way that entertains them, is the other side of that. That's the other kind of the yin and the yang of a live entertainer. Is, yeah, you could be doing your thing, but is it entertaining? Are people enjoying it? So that's kind of like creatively, that just, it always, every show I play inspires me to do the next show better or different. Or there's times, I drop songs out of my set list that I played for years and years that I was good at playing, but I felt like it wasn't really jiving with what I had going on. So the live performance and what you do in the interim until the next one, like that's sort of the process of picking it apart. And you're like, yeah, we played the song and it was okay, but you know what? Maybe we'll nix that off the set list, and then this next time we'll play a different song, or we'll learn something new, or we'll play this song in a different way, or those kind of like with stand-up comedy, and like that kind of, I'm curious about how their process goes, because I'm a musician and I see how my process is from performance to performance. And I know what I do in the practice space, which is sometimes different from what I do, in front of a live audience. So, yeah, definitely. I'm definitely a process guy. That kind of inspires me to the process. I love getting engaged in the process of what's going to happen and how the evolution is going to come,
Yeah, that's neat. Do you think that that's something that is becoming less and less of a thing as time goes on because people aren't being allowed to do these, to express themselves creatively? Like stand-up comedy's been shut down basically, right? And I don't have kids, but you do. Like, is the younger generation interested in getting up on stage and, having that
yeah,
experience? I don't know.
yeah. Oh no, I totally believe it. But what the thing is with us old guys, and I know you're a bit younger than me, but I just rolled 40 this past year, so I'm feeling it every day. But like with my daughters, there's still the desire to perform. There's still the desire to learn. Like I'm gonna purchase myself a set of electronic drums this weekend. And my daughter was so excited because all she wants to do is have a jam session. Like that's all she wants to do is jam with her dad. Like she'll get out the keyboard and I'll play the drums and whatever. We'll just make some noise. It doesn't matter. But it's the activity. She's very motivated. But what I'm saying is, there's going to be the desire to learn, to perform, to showcase your talents, whatever that may be, whether it's music or acting or juggling, whatever. But I believe that their audience and their stage is going to evolve. I mean, look at things like TikTok and Facebook Live and YouTube and those kind of, Instagram even. There's a different, like you're saying, I don't think it's holding anybody back. I think right now the way we're connected digitally and through the internet is actually bringing audiences, a larger audience, to what you've got going on, and maybe we won't see so many live performances. One of my biggest bummer moments of the year is I didn't get to go see the Dave Matthews Band in July like I go every year, because COVID, and it sucks, but you learn that there's going to be light at the end of that tunnel. You got to move on, but maybe as time kind of moves forward, we're going to see more of those digital comedy shows and those those online streaming performances and things like that. And I took advantage of a lot of those, like on my TV, over in the spring and the summer. Like, I'd get on there and watch, Dave Matthews Band do a live show, or Fish, or see the Dropkick Murphys play on the Diamond at Fenway Park and stuff like that. Like, I'm enjoying that we have the ability to still, like, it's hard for me to see the Dropkick Murphys because they play a lot in New England. They don't come to this area a lot. So being able to just turn on the TV and sit in my chair and watch them do their thing was really cool, So it's opening up options for everybody, not just the younger generation, but like to people like me that, years ago you would have to seek it out, find your information, astutely research it, and then buy the ticket, go to the show, Whereas nowadays I Google, hey, Dropkick Murphys, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, hey, there's a live stream tomorrow at 8 p.m. And you're like, cool. And you tune it in. And then you're a part of it. And you're on that with, 25,000 other people that tuned it in that night. It's just really cool. So I don't think that it's as big a hindrance as some may make it out to be. I agree that there's some difficulty there because I'm a live musician. I haven't played anywhere in over a year. That's me. I play at least 5, 6, 8 shows a year, So it's been hard for me because my routine has been, interrupted. But I'm also taking advantage of the situation we have, right? So in about a month is St. Patrick's Day. That's a big deal for me. I play in a band. We do a lot of Irish music, and and I talked to the owner of the pub and I said, hey, it looks like the restrictions are starting to loosen up a little bit. Just to throw it out there, we're happy to play. We're happy to be a part of it. Just let us know what's going on. And he got back to me and said, we're kind of playing it by ear. We don't know yet. I'll keep you posted. Thanks for checking in. But then I was like, all right, Shaun, let's come up with a plan B. Because last year, when all the shutdowns started happening and my work shut down, it was like, 2 days before St. Patrick's Day. And then the day of, it was like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. The governor said, the health department said, whatever, you know, they had to shut down the restaurants, right? So I was like, well, plan B, what can I, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to jump on the train with everybody else. So my plan B, and Bill, if you can make this happen, you're absolutely invited. If I don't play at the bar, I'm going to have a little private, small backyard gathering, and I'm still going to play my show. You know, maybe if you can make it, that'd be awesome if you came over and some other friends.
Yeah, man.
You know, 10, maybe 15 people max, social distancing, all that stuff. And then we'll throw up a thing, and we'll put our phone on a tripod, and we'll Facebook Live the whole thing. And that way, you know, I can still have my St. Patrick's Day. But what I thought would be cool about this too is that if it does happen this way, now I can get people back east that don't get to see me do my thing that often.
Yeah.
Now, hey, at 7:00 on Facebook Live, we're going to do a thing, or 5:00 or what have you. You know what I'm saying? And then now my audience grows because now I have like my parents and my brothers and cousins and, you know, old friends and stuff like that live in New England and all over the country. They can all tune in and see me do my thing. You know, so fingers crossed I get the gig because frankly, I love doing it and, you know, it's nice to make that money. But if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be equally as excited about moving into this new territory, the live streaming. And, you know, so I'm still going to get it done. But like I said, again, like I think that the audience is the new evolution. Yeah. How you connect with your audience, I should say.
Yeah. The internet can be used for good or bad.
Yeah. I mean, I remember back in 1999, 2000, where it took 8 minutes to download a photo, you know, and nowadays you can live stream across the globe. You know, it's wonderful where our technology is going. And
yeah, anybody that has a phone can live stream. So
yeah,
it's way more widespread now than.
Yeah. That's why I hate it when people complain about their phones. I'm like, dude, you have more computing power in your pocket than all of NASA, and people landed on the moon, dude. Like, this is a miraculous. I mean, I'm talking to you guys right now. You're in Michigan. Adam, I don't know where you're at. Florida. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's what, 2,000 miles from here, 2,500 miles, you know, depending on what part of Florida you're in. But you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing. On my phone, my communication device, I have the ability to talk to you guys and do this podcast. I'm living in South Bend, Indiana. I know that, Bill, you're up in Grand Rapids, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas a while back in a different way, it's, you know, we'd have to schedule time to get together and be in the same location. And, you know,
yeah, this wouldn't be possible 20 years ago.
Yeah, this wouldn't be possible 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, you could probably make it happen, but the level of quality and convenience was definitely more suspect back then, you know.
And you'll be surprised.
Yeah. And not everybody could do it. Now anybody can do it.
Right. That's why I love things like YouTube, where it's like you can have whatever you want. It's yours. Make it yours. You know, have that creativity, that freedom of creativity, where it's like you don't have this gatekeeper. You know, whereas if you went a more traditional route of you know, any art form, a musician, an author, you know, stage actor, what have you, there's gatekeepers. You know, that kind of you have to navigate. But like you get like YouTube or Zoom or Facebook Live, and it's just have at it, dude. You're limited by your own level of creativity at this point, not by the technology that can propel you there, which is an interesting advancement in culture in the last maybe 10 years, you know?
Yeah, the ease of accessibility, I think, like just recording a conversation on an iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, Adam. I don't know if you remember, somebody was talking to us about recording something on an iPhone to send into the show, and they were surprised at like how good the quality was. Like, just so if you're got the itch to contribute to the show and you want to like have the conversation and send it in, like you'd be surprised at what you could do with just a cell phone as far as recording a conversation. So just to throw that out there.
Yeah. And it's not just the digital, the transfer from my cell phone to your computer screen or whatever. It's all of it. Like all the technology going into phones right now is battery technology has come a long way in just a decade. Microphone technology, recording technology, cameras. Look at some of the cameras we have in these phones nowadays. It's like, dude, they don't have that advanced level of cameras on some NASA satellites. I mean, these
Yeah.
things are outrageous good.
It's more
And they're
like your
taking-
camera can make a phone call now instead of your phone has a camera. You know?
Yeah. It's like, it reminds me of that Mitch Hedberg joke. It's like, I don't own a microwave oven, but I have a clock that occasionally cooks shit, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's, it's wild, man. Cause I mean, the camera in this that I'm looking, I mean, it's what, maybe 3 millimeters in diameter. I mean, I think about cameras back when I was a kid in the 80s. They were like these gigantic things. You had to, put it on your shoulder, for crying out loud, because they weighed 50 pounds, and the lensing was huge. And, as technology gets better, it's the hardware and the software both kind of sort of co-evolve, into something better and more, makes it more depth and, easier user interface.
Yeah, man. Technology. Cool. Bonus question 5. What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
My single greatest driving force?
Yeah.
Ensuring that my children are capable, responsible, contributing adults. That they're at a situation where they can support themselves. I don't push college on my kids. If that's something they want to do, I will 1000% support it. I'll probably end up paying for a lot of it. But I always tell them, like, hey, you don't have to go to college, but you have to be trained. Now, whether that's an apprenticeship or you go to beauty school and learn how to cut hair, whatever. I don't, I know my daughter's super smart and she's definitely like advanced in a lot of ways, but she really enjoys doing hair. Like, and who am I to tell her that can't be her path? So, I mean, just making sure that my children have a good foundation of like how to be a contributing member of society. That's like the one thing that it keeps me up at night and it motivates me to wake up in the morning and scrape the car off of ice and head to work. Is my focus now is not obviously on my life, but it's been focused on their lives, but giving them a solid foundation. So when they start their lives and they become adults someday, which is a terrifying thought for a dad with daughters, but when they get there, that they've had the training and they have the wherewithal to kind of navigate, like more so than I did. Like teach my kid how to change a spare tire all the way to, start thinking about your future. Because, if my one daughter wants to be an apprentice and learn how to fix windmills, go for it. But if my daughter wants to, go to community college and start small and work her way, go for it too. I'm not on the train of college is the only way you're going to be successful. Like, Mike Rowe, I should have put Mike Rowe down as one of my role models, to be honest with you. I'm surprised I didn't put that down.
I love that guy.
Mike, yeah, dude, he's great. But he always says it's not the best path for the most people, And his thing is there's legitimate occupations that are skilled work. And yeah, you have to wake up early and go home late. And sometimes you smell like crap. And sometimes you come home covered in dirt and dust and grime. But at the end of the day, you're contributing to the betterment of our society. Tradespeople are people that they build the roads, they build the bridges, but they also fix them. They fix the plumbing. They wire the lights. I mean, I could say all day long I'm addicted to my iPhone or Facebook, but really I'm addicted to reliable electricity. And flipping the switch and knowing the light comes on is indeed a bit of faith that there's hundreds of thousands of people that ensure that happens. And teaching my children that is a noble thing to do. But yeah, if by all means, if you want to be in college for 12 years and get a PhD, go for that too. Like, I'm not restricting what they do, but it definitely motivates me to make sure that they're, whether small or large, they will impact their community in a better way. Leave it better than you found it type thing,
You want to set them up for success. Give them a
Yeah,
leg
and
up
that's
from what
that's
you can.
my driver. That's what motivates me. It's like being like that motivates me to make better career decision. It motivates me to, sacrifice a few things. That way they can have those opportunities to learn how to do that, navigate that, how to be teachable, which is a lesson I try to reinforce with them a lot.
Bonus question 6.
Oh God, how many bonus questions are there?
There's one more after this.
There's one more. Okay.
Yeah. What do you choose to ignore?
I'll put it to you this way. And there's a lot of things I ignore. I ignore stop signs sometimes, but especially when I'm on my bicycle, like I don't believe in them. They're yield signs to me. Like I'm not stopping and putting my foot down.
A rolling
Crazy people.
stop, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I California roll the crap out of
Yeah,
stop
there you
signs.
go.
But really, I honestly try and ignore the sort of the vortex that is opinion level politics, right? You can't, Facebook is a thing, and I'm on Facebook, and there's always that one post where it's like this and that and the other, and they're just trying to suck you into their side, and I'm just like, that's one thing that I truly ignore. And in a different way too, I also ignore, like, you'd be watching a TV show, like I have Hulu and Netflix and all that stuff, but I'll watch Hulu, and occasionally in the middle of a show, like a commercial will come on. And I completely ignore it. And I stare at that little number in the corner of the screen until it ticks down at 0. Like I try, if it's a drug commercial or soap or a car, I look at that corner of the screen and be like, this is going to be over in 9, 8. Like I totally ignore advertising. Like
on Spotify, when they want you to click to watch a video to get half an hour of free music, click it, but then I turn the volume all the way down so I don't have to listen to it.
Right. Yeah, I totally ignore advertising. Except during the Super Bowl. That's the only time I really, Super Bowl ads are the best. Which I thought it interesting too. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Budweiser has decided to not have any Super Bowl advertising. They're going to take the money they would normally spend on their advertising, for the Super Bowl. I mean, they're what, it's like $1 million a nanosecond for a Super Bowl commercial.
Drinking
right?
is up so high right now that they don't even need to worry about advertising.
Yeah,
that's my view.
So I mean, like Budweiser, it's always been a big Super Bowl commercial entity, right? And they're going to take all that budget that they would normally spend on Super Bowl ads, and they're going to put it into education and awareness about
very cool
COVID-19 and vaccinations and all that stuff, which I thought was really cool.
So
it's about time a large company became a little bit, even give us the appearance of being responsible. Like it doesn't even have to be
company,
right?
How can they be responsible anyway? I'm just
okay.
Okay.
No, all right. Think about it less like it's a beer company, and think about it more like what that represents, right? So put the beer aside. They could make anything. Crayons, tampons, computer screens, whatever. Doesn't matter what they make. What they are is a very, very large, super duper rich corporation, right? And that money and that corporation carries a lot of influence. So I'm glad to see that they're at least giving us, the consumer, the appearance, whether it's true or not, it's irrelevant, but they're giving us the appearance that they're trying to do the right thing. And they're a very large entity. If Amazon.com did the same thing, it would be, like they're large, they have money, there's a lot of influence there. So I'm glad that they're moving the needle.
Yeah, I guess maybe the saving grace is
direction.
that it's a big entity and they don't have to do this to make money.
Right.
But I don't know, just speaking of ads in general, and you mentioned something, they're going to do something with COVID awareness or whatever. There's only 2 countries in the entire world where makers of prescription drugs are allowed to directly advertise to consumers. It is America and New Zealand. There's no other country that I know of. And if you can prove me wrong, please do so, listeners. And we have Discord, Telegram. Let me know. But those are
it sounds very truthful. I'm not. I would never deny that. But it doesn't. I mean, I've been overseas, and yeah, you don't see drug commercials on TV. You don't see advertising in magazines.
So I just think it's funny that a beer company is going to push prescription drugs, like, and these aren't even, it's a gene thing.
I think it's more about, like, look, maybe I can't speak for Budweiser, right? But maybe if you look at it through this lens, that what they're trying to do is to, in a way, be a part of the solution, as opposed to just sitting back on their laurels and being not even a part of the problem. But, like, I read somewhere that alcohol use has gone up like 400% since last year, like in 2020. And I was on that gravy train with biscuit wheels, dude. I drank a ton last year, and I probably shouldn't have. I've actually cut way back on how much I drink. But
good.
A lot of people they kept drinking, and they weren't working, and and then whatever, and all the liquor stores and bars are still open, so that drinking occurs, but I like the idea that a company like Budweiser, good, bad, or indifferent, is at least trying to kind of, if not actually, then give us the appearance that they're trying to do the right thing. I can respect that about Budweiser. I will not respect Bud Light, but I can respect what they're doing.
Well, yeah, I mean, there certainly is a shift in the industry. They've started putting ingredients lists on the back of some of their beers as well, which I found to be, refreshing, since it's not legally required. But, it's nice to know what you're putting into your body.
Yeah. And well, I love those beer companies. Like, I'm a big beer geek. So there's beer companies that they're like, they put the ingredients on, but you look at it, it says water, barley, yeast. It's not anything. And hops, it's
yeah,
not,
but listen, even the yeast alone, there is something to that. There's infinite numbers of yeasts that can be used,
right.
And they captured that one that's going to give you a flavor profile, along with the art of making it. It's
right.
It's like anything else. How long do you ferment for? How long do you let it sit in this? What temperature? What type of filtering? What's the metal made out of? All these different things that drastically, change. That's why you have IPAs and Pilsners. And so, beer is one of those things that you see the expression of art really come out in the culinary ways.
Right.
It's really cool.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's great when you can see
and
three ingredients.
It's almost limitless, the amount of combinations. Those 4 ingredients, the combinations are just,
Oh, yeah. Listen, yeast is even like industry secret. There's places in New York that have been making like bagels or bread using the same yeast cultures for like 100 years. And the secret is in the yeast that they captured. But what do? You can never get it unless you can get their fresh cultures that they make, because as soon as that bread's cooked, you get the flavor, but you lose the liveness. So yeah, it's it's a really cool kind of probiotic that, people forget out there, especially, a nice fermented
most beer companies employ biologists.
Yeah, they
biochemists, so they can create yeast in the labs, so they can brew the beer that they choose to brew. I love beer, man, and I think it's such a great device when you look at it. It allows people to be social. It creates jobs. It's an employment opportunity. It also allows people to be craftsmen, to be artists in their fields. Yeah, you could drink a Budweiser and you can think, well, Budweiser's lame, right? But if you think about it, you can drink a Budweiser in Seoul, Korea, and in St. Louis, Missouri, and they taste exactly the same. Now that takes skill, especially on the massive, amount that they brew and sell every day, every year. And then the smaller craft brewery places, they're just as creative and dynamic with their beer recipes too,
Well, and there's something to that, always having that exact same flavor profile, or having something that's different every single time and unique. When that's done well, it's like a baker, who,
Right.
you're not getting exactly, 1 1/4 cups. You're getting what they tossed in, which means every recipe has a slightly different magic to it. So I always kind of like that. Like, there's a surprise. When you open up that can, you don't know exactly what you're going to get. You might know it's going to be good. The area it's going to be in the flavor profile, but it's still a surprise. And I don't know, man, that's kind of a magic we've lost I hear people talk about it and like, milk. You used to chase the seasons of the food because it was, not they were eating off of the land and what was growing throughout the year.
Right.
And so you'd get this flavor profile change, the whole product. So milk in January would have a certain taste compared to milk in June. And, now milk is just milk.
Right.
So yeah,
And
that's why I like the
because of
craft
that-
over the bud.
That standardization across the board, it's all the cows are eating the same grain, the same, that's why grass-fed beef tastes so different because, they're not eating, there's different levels there, but they're still like on the macro level. Yeah. I mean, it's great that our food and beer and other, consumable production is at a level that, we could, no person on the planet has to go hungry. We make more than enough food. Like, I think there's some estimates that for pound, there's enough food on the planet to feed you like 4 times over every meal for the rest of your life. It's just the way our production keeps churning it out, And, but on the micro level, on the small level, like small beer companies, small restaurants, small bakeries, that's where you really like, I'm a variety guy. I don't like the same thing all the time. I want to switch it up, try different stuff, try new things. I'm always looking for new beers, new breweries to go to, new places to visit. So that kind of micro economy of these businesses that are doing small things, we're all familiar with bread, but if you tried the bread at this Portuguese bakery, it's ridiculous, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. People carve out their niche and they showcase their talent, and the consumers can definitely benefit from that.
Yeah.
Did you say we had one more question, Bill?
Yep. We got one more, and it is: what do you hope people will say at your funeral?
At my funeral? Wow. I don't know about what they'll say, but I hope there's some drinking and laughing and music. I hope it's a representation of what I chose to, those enjoyments I chose to pursue. I hope, there's a bunch of craft beer and some people playing guitars and everyone's laughing and having a good time and being optimistic. I don't want tears and woo woo but as far as what people say, I would hope they say that, that I was a good person, that I, that I loved my children, that I loved those people around me, that, I was a loyal person. But those kind of questions at, what's going to happen at your funeral type thing, it's hard to quantify because my answer might be different from a year from now than it is today, just based on my experiences. But, really, I hope people would speak of me with a fondness, not like, Shaun, what an a-hole. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want, he was great, but you know what? Working with him sucked, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that humble bragging type deal, I would just honestly just want people to, have a fun time remembering me. A friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, a few years back passed away, and the other day I was just going through an old hard drive, listening to some music, and I clicked on something and I heard his voice. I was like, oh man, like, you want to talk about role models? He should have also been on the list. This guy, I learned more of how to be a man from him than I ever did from my dad. And that's not a knock on my dad, but he just, a welder, labor guy, got up every day, took care of his family, just had all the positive examples that you could pull from.
And that's the thing, especially just to touch back on the show again, is why I think that it's important that we have these conversations with the people that have had these impacts on us now before they pass away, because so many people are dying now. Like I can't tell you how many of friends of my family, like my dad's friends, the people I've grown up around that are gone now, that I can't sit down and have this conversation with, and I wish I would have. Mm-hmm. So just to put a little finishing dollop or whatever on the episode, like, encourage participation from our listeners and support the show. Like, if you don't, want to participate, throw us some bones or something. We have stickers soon and some other things coming along. So, yeah.
time, treasure, talent, support us in whatever way you feel fit. It's value for value.
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism. I don't wanna why? 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 Why is there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? I don't wanna 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 why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.